welcome. This is the Durango City Council meeting of September 20th, 2021. The time is 5:35. May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Phillips?
Councilor Bosmans?
Present.
Councilor Buell?
Here.
Councilor Youssef?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Present.
Mayor Bennett?
Present. Tom, may we have the introduction of the translator, please?
Yeah, we have two translators. Viria, I believe you're going to do the introductory remarks.
Yes, we're ready. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Viria Sosa, and I am here with my partner, Sam Guzman. We are here with the Community Language Co-op to help create a space for language justice. What that means is that we want to create a space where everyone can participate and engage in the language of their heart or the language that they feel most comfortable in. We will use simultaneous interpretation to create this space. When I finish saying this in Spanish, we will turn on interpretation and you will see a globe icon that says interpretation. If you are not fully bilingual, we ask that you select your preferred language. If you are bilingual, feel free to listen to everyone in their language. When you select your language, you can check mute original audio so you don't hear both languages at the same time. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Viria Sosa y estoy aquí con mi compañero Sam Guzmán y estamos aquí con la Community Language Co-op para ayudar a crear un espacio donde practicamos la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que eso significa es que queremos crear un espacio donde todos puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón o en el idioma en el que se sientan más cómodos. Usaremos la interpretación simultánea para crear este espacio. Cuando termine de decir esto, activaremos la interpretación y verá un icono de globo que dice interpretación. Si no es completamente bilingüe, le pedimos que seleccione su idioma preferido. Si es bilingüe, puede escuchar a todos en su idioma. Cuando seleccione su idioma, puede hacer clic en silenciar el audio original para que no escuches ambos idiomas al mismo tiempo. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Identification of actual or perceived conflicts of interest. Do we have any counsel with any of the items on the agenda tonight? No? Thank you. Before we start the public participation, excuse me for a moment.
Be careful of this.
Yep, I got it.
Let me in that way.
Sorry, COVID considerations make things more difficult. I appreciate your patience and understanding. So now we will start with public participation. And
Recording in progress.
It's not gonna work.
Are we doing feedback? Okay. So Olivia Lopez, please. Are you here for public comment or for the proclamation?
For the proclamation.
Okay, I can take your name off the list then. And Enrique, are you also here for the, okay. Alex Vick? Proclamation. Okay, Holly Dobson. Please state your name and whether or not you're a city resident up at the podium, please.
So what is protocol? Take my mask off while I'm speaking? Okay. City Council, thank you. I appreciate 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that part. One second, hold on here. This section of the agenda is set aside for the public to provide comments or ask questions regarding items that are not scheduled for a hearing or public testimony or that do not otherwise appear on this agenda. City Council will not respond to questions from the dais. Citizens should address their comments directly to the City Council, and you'll have 3 minutes, which the timer will show up on the screen. As this is a virtual meeting, the avenues for public participation have been adjusted. All written comments received by the city clerk by noon today have been delivered to council and will be summarized in the meeting minutes. Thank you. All right, Holly, sorry.
Thank you. I'm here to speak about the planned fire station in the downtown area being located on the 9R property. My name's Holly Jobson. I live at 1215 East 3rd Avenue, which means that I look out my window at that property and know what an important property it is to our community. I have 3 things, and that means they get a minute each. The first one is that we really need to find the best location for a downtown fire station. The 9R property is not it. Planning is needed to determine the best location. As I've been researching this, I've come to realize that there are many plans out there on the internet where cities have done this planning really well and have published these plans and the names of the companies they worked with to develop them on the internet. When I spoke with Jose, he actually knew of these plans from his past experience with city fire departments. The fire district seems to think that just finding a place and the fire chief's opinion is enough planning. You know, I've sent them a letter, and I will forward this to the board, of the planning that I've seen and how great it can be. I'm quoting, planning the location of fire stations and their actual design has become increasingly important. Proper fire station distribution is a major factor in efficient, economical fire protection. The determination of fire station locations, or more accurately, the deployment of fire companies and personnel, has traditionally been a matter of professional judgment and intuition. In the past, fire stations were placed on or near thoroughfares and in areas with excessive response distance from existing stations. Site locations were based on opinions. This is no longer an accepted methodology. As our fire district, we should be calling them accountable for an accepted methodology on planning a fire station location. My second point is that we need to find the best use of the 9R property. Our city talks about the importance of neighborhoods, the importance of housing, many guiding principles that we have for what we talk about being important in our city. We recognize that we're dealing with things like global warming, water shortages, a pandemic. We got some crises going on here. It is really a time when wise decisions are needed. You know, we are just the caretakers of this property, as you guys won't be sitting on the city council forever. I won't be living in that house forever. The fire chief will change over time. But think about, are we being good caretakers of the property? Are we caring for Durango? And my third point,
your time's up.
is that our public entities need to work together and assume their fiduciary responsibilities to protect the interests and values of taxpayers, both future and current. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Larry Hansen? Okay. And your name, and if you're a city resident, please.
I live in the city, and I've been here for 18 years. I'm gonna set my little timer here.
There'll be one up on the screen if you'd rather watch it.
Fair enough. Thank you kindly. I bought a property in the city 11 years ago. Old junker, and I've been remodeling for the same amount of time. I'm still going. I still have windows to replace. I wanted to find a place for my family, raise my kids, grow into the community, contribute. As you all know, this is a challenging place to live, and I poured every penny I had into this place. And I felt safe and nurtured by the community. I felt great about the planning department, and up until recently. And the question of this fire station moving in across the street from me, next to my bedroom window, next to my kids' bedroom windows, next to my recording studio, next to my neighbor's recording studio, is completely absurd that there are so many citizens living there, permanent residents that live right around this building. And I can't express my disappointment enough. We have worked so hard, and now I'm looking at this thing, well, what happens to my property value? It's not attractive to have a fire station right there. And I don't even want to put this into the public concourse that whether we like the firefighters or not. That shouldn't even be part of this question. And so far, all we have heard is, I heard the fire chief, he was shaming us. You should appreciate your firefighters. Of course we appreciate them. This should not be part of the conversation, whether the fire station should be located here or not. Absolutely not. So let's take that one out. It's an absurd location. It's a residential neighborhood. They can't move in there. I've fought so hard for everything I have. Every little penny put into that place, I'm still going. You heard that? Okay. What happens? Is there any compensation? Anybody has informed me about meetings? No. Anybody allowed me to speak publicly in these meetings? The answer is no. I've heard council members favor the fire station even. We have friends who work in EMT and the fire department. I don't like to hear that from council members. I'm sorry. That means that I hear that you're already predisposed to this. I don't think that's a fair discussion, like fair points to bring into a discussion like this. Jobson, how many years have you lived on 3rd?
32.
She's fought 32 years, put every little penny into her house. This is not fair to the residents that have put all their money into the houses, raised their families here, banked on a future here. The fire department must find another place. There can be no doubt about that. River City Hall, that perfect location. They are right on the artery. I want to say this too. I heard at one point that the chief said, this is me, I'm going to continue, that the chief said that they were not going to turn out on 3rd Avenue when they were going to go up Florida. That's absurd. Can we see it in writing?
Thank you, Larry.
Absurd.
We really appreciate your
Thank you for listening.
Greg Hoke, please.
Good evening, Greg Hoke, 862 Main Avenue. I sent you a letter last week, 2 weeks ago. I'd like to have that read into the minutes for this meeting. My intention is really not to put the council on the spot, but sometimes that's where you end up because you're councilors. That's why you run for office. So when I served as community development director for the city, there were frequently issues or projects that came up where we decided that a community meeting or a neighborhood meeting would be really helpful prior to having any submittal made to avoid misunderstandings, confusion, or even anger at the formal review process. It's my understanding that the staff's ability to call for these meetings has been shifted into the city council's purview. So I'm here to ask the council to exercise that purview and hold a public forum where your citizens have the ability to ask questions and raise issues and obtain answers about this proposal. I've had many Durango citizens, as I've talked about this issue over the last month, ask me the following type questions. Has the city council ever publicly presented its position about the move of the fire station into 9R? Has the city council ever formally considered selling the existing fire station property at River City Hall to the fire district? Does the city council know how much this project is going to cost the city's taxpayers? How much will it cost to move the police department onto the site? How much public parking will be lost in this proposal, and how will it be replaced and where? What will be the impacts on Buckley Park events if the Main Avenue street closure is no longer allowed? Couldn't these questions have answers provided in a public forum sponsored by the city? I certainly think so. I'm basically here pleading to the council to do the right thing, to recognize that a long-standing tenet of local government democracy is to allow its citizens' voices to be heard on any matter of community-wide importance. I believe the council can start this community trust-building process on this issue by being willing to allow your citizens to be heard in a genuine public forum. I know full well, short of any public meeting prior to Planning Commission review of the major site plan for this project, Those attending planning commission meetings will be told it is too late to raise these issues at the site plan review stage, that they should have sought those answers beforehand. So holding the meeting can illuminate that anticipated frustration, it can eliminate that anticipated frustration and resentment. I sincerely hope that the City Council will recognize that this is a 100-year opportunity to make sound decisions over the upcoming decades that are made within this framework of
Thank you,
what is
Greg.
beneficial
Greg,
to
I'm
the neighborhood as well as the entire community.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Greg. Appreciate it. Robin Wiles.
I'm grateful to be here. My name is Robin Wiles. I live at 3104 Junction. I'm a property owner at 1327 East 2nd, across from Smiley and catty corner to the 9R building the fire department wants to purchase and develop. This is an extraordinary event. I have lived in Durango since 1976, so I think I can say that. It's extraordinarily consequential. This is not a move to an empty lot on the south end of town, nor rebuilding on their existing site. This is creating an all-emergency services center in the middle of a historic residential mixed-use community neighborhood bordering on our one downtown heavily used park. Something this consequential to an entire town requires serious consideration, and the voices of the citizenry deserve to be heard. I am asking now what you as our elected representatives can do to help us have our voice. Chief Doty says he has met with the neighbors. I am one of several directly affected neighbors who have yet to be contacted by the fire department. I am, however, acutely aware the chief is speaking to what I call the movers and shakers in town. And I sense the residents and business owners on East 2nd and 13th have been dismissed out of hand. On August 15th, I heard him promise 3rd Avenue residents he wouldn't ever use their boulevard. In effect, he gives himself a handicap right out the gate. That begs loads of questions, is probably perilous, and points out another truly concerning example why this site isn't quite right. I attended a memorial service at Hood Mortuary on Saturday. It was painful imagining the disruptive sounds of a main emergency services center breaking into the soft murmurs of the mourners. I am asking each of you, I'm really asking you to go and spend 30 minutes walking that entire area. Consider all the trucks, official cars, EMT vehicles, police, and their visitors making their way in and out in non-emergency and emergency mode. Please sit and consider gathering in a park encircled by this traffic and activity, and consider the practicality of the promises Chief Doty has made while you are there. I have yet to speak with anyone who knows the area intimately, whose first reaction upon hearing this isn't to roll their eyes and ask, who thinks that will work? The only way it will work is at the needless personal and financial expense of others. Buckley Park itself is an irreplaceable, peaceful oasis in our very small downtown.
Robin, thank you. But
We need
your
and
time is up.
ask for your help in preserving that peace.
Thank you very much. Ellen Stein.
Hi, thanks for having public comment at least as a part of a public process that's critical to our democracy. I'm Ellen Stein. I live at 3314 East 4th Avenue. I have been in Durango for 16 years, and although my home is 2 miles north of town, I don't think that matters with this issue. It is a community-wide issue, and that's my main concern, is that there has been no public process for this significant decision, though considered a real estate transaction, and what its effects are going to be long-term on our community. Had the city hired an AICP credentialed community development director after Greg was retired, we might not be in this position. There are a whole lot of issues that the city would be avoiding if there were adequate public outreach processes happening on the front end instead of now, like this issue. In August, I wrote that this was the biggest mistake in Durango's recent history, the school board voting to sell the admin building to the fire district. The main concern I raised in my letter to the Herald and to City Council that I shared with the school board and fire department board is that in March 2021, you established the Durango Renewal Partnership, which has a mission to facilitate reinvestment in underutilized areas to address community priorities and create thriving places. And the vision is for a midtown with a flourishing community comprised of diverse, attractive, and thriving hubs of activity shaped by public-private partnerships. The Durango Renewal Partnership Midtown Urban Renewal Plan lists in it the 9R admin building as a large increment is possible from the 9R admin building change of ownership and use. And this is described as an anchor building for this partnership, which has gained so much attention and investment by the city. So it's quite striking that you're ready to plow forward, and you do have the power to change the course of this decision. You are imbued with the vision and leadership that this community needs, and we are hoping and here today asking you to implement and effect some public process for conversation about the 9R building. Answering in that process, why not River City Hall? Why not redevelopment there? And a whole host of things I don't have time to say, but it absolutely feels like taxation without representation when we have public money going to the school district that held a very last minute public input, not even processed barely. The fire department say they met with the neighbors. I'm a neighbor 2 miles north of town. I didn't have any opportunity to learn about this process. So I am pleading as well for you to please hold a public process on this issue as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Kendra Kwan? Are you here for the proclamation, or are you here for public comment? Yeah. Okay, great.
My name is Kendra. I live at 1327 East 2nd. Robin is my landlord. I've lived there for just over 6 years. Thank you for letting me speak. I was pretty shocked to hear about the sale, actually just through the newspaper, considering that I live right there. And I hit up Robin and was like, do you know anything about this? And just based on the parking alone, it's a horrible, horrible idea. Parking is an absolute nightmare. Traffic is a nightmare. That whole corner is terrible on 2nd and 13th. I feel bad for people that are in wheelchairs because there's nowhere for them to go. You literally just come out of Smiley and you're on your own on the street. There's no sidewalk. There's huge rocks. And I'm like, how does anyone even navigate this to get to the park? So I wish I had an answer for the 9R building. I don't. I think that apartments are also a horrible idea just because there's not adequate parking. And I definitely don't think if the station was to go in and they took all the parking, I'm sorry, all the parking off of 13th and 12th, it would just be an absolute nightmare. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kendra. I think that we have one public comment virtually. Tom, do you want to cue that one up?
Actually, we have two now, Mayor. I will queue up the first one, which is Dick White. Dick, if you could just state your name and whether you are a city resident, I will put 3 minutes on the clock. Dick, if you want, yep, you're good to go, Dick.
I've got problems with the audio. I'm hearing the audio 30 seconds late.
We can
We
hear
can hear
you,
you
Dick.
fine.
Yes,
We can hear you, Dick. Go ahead and start talking and we'll
Okay.
restart the timer.
I'm having real problems with the audio because I'm getting it after 30-second delay. Anyway, this is Dick White. I live at 575 East 8th Street. I'm here to comment on the recent ethics complaint that I filed against Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy. Now you're telling me to go and I'm already speaking. I don't understand.
We can hear you.
Okay, I will continue. I had a private conversation with Councilor Noseworthy, and I realized that I could have. I'm lost. I don't know what you're telling me because I'm 30 seconds out of sync.
Tom, can you maybe have Mr. White call back in?
I will continue over my own voice. I was saying, after a private conversation I realized that I could have and should have sought additional information I realized that I could have and should have sought additional information that would have clarified the circumstances that led to the complaint. For that significant oversight and for the pain and expense it caused, I apologize.
Thank you, Dick. Tom, did Dick?
Sorry, Mayor, I got some technical issues. We have 2 more people lined up. The first one is Salye Stein. Salye, I'm going to allow you to talk, and if you could just state your name, and if you're a city resident, we will put 3 minutes on the clock.
I think that's Sally Stein, possibly.
Sally. Oh, Salye, Sally.
Sally, can you hear us?
Sally, we need you to unmute your microphone if you can.
Okay, is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I believe very significantly and strongly that this issue has skyrocketed through the city, much too fast for a very important reciting. I will tell you just a very quick personal story. I had need of the fire department several years ago. They were at my place in 2 minutes, probably saved my life. The way this whole thing is cited right now, I do not think that would have been or would be the case if it were a contemporary situation. I believe very strongly, certainly based on our politics today, we have had no transparency in this situation. We need transparency, and council members, we need your input. We need the input of everybody who's involved in this. This is not a temporary reciting. This will be recited for years and years. And the way I understand it, based on my information provided by Greg, is that as an experienced and expert planner, he is very much against it, and I agree with every single aspect of it that he brought up. We need to invite and listen to consultants who are experienced and expert in planning, not just somebody like the fire department chief, whom I like, but I suspect he was tired. He's looked at 18 or 19 different sites. and just said, okay, screw it, we're gonna take this 9R site. 9R is willing to sell to us. That's not the way that you affect and complete a very important real estate transaction. We need we need insight, and we need expertise, and we need everybody who's involved to participate this. Why are we going so fast? Let's stop, reconsider, and speculate about what our concerns are and the results are, and let's everybody get together and talk about this. Don't rocket it through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Tom, who's our third person?
All right, Mayor, we have one last person, Cheryl Locke. Cheryl, you have been unmuted. If you could unmute on your end and then state your name and whether you're a city resident, we'll put 3 minutes on the clock.
Cheryl?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay, my name is Cheryl Luck. I live at 1323 East 2nd Avenue. And not only do I feel that the location is way off for the fire department, I have many concerns about living there on that corner and having the fire department in my backyard. But beyond that, the vision of Durango and the amazing building that is, and the history that building carries for so many people, it could be such a community asset. It is downtown. The traffic on our corner alone is hellacious, but on the other side of the park and the 9R buildings isn't any better. The parking situation, the flow of traffic for emergency vehicles, it doesn't make any sense. Anybody that I've talked to within that area knows it doesn't make sense. The events that happen at Buckley Park, like was mentioned earlier, what happens? We can't close those streets anymore. They have no easy access to Camino del Rio, which gives them the access up and down for the city. It was mentioned in the meeting that was at the fire department, which I attended, that there weren't that many residences there. Hood Mortuary has residents, Smiley has residents. It was mentioned that Handcrafted House, Durango Cyclery were there. They also have residents. They're not just businesses, it's multi-use. We live there. And when the snowplows go up and down the street, our windows shake. It's not going to be an easy place for them to get in and out, and it directly affects residents. The school board is deciding the future of Durango, the downtown district. It could be so cool. It could be something amazing. Let Shaw Brothers buy it. Let somebody buy it that does multi-use like the rest of the neighborhood. It could be something that really changes the future of Durango. It is a great building that has much higher purpose.
Thank you, Cheryl. We appreciate it. Council usually doesn't respond from the dais, but I believe Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy wanted to make a brief response to Dick White's comment.
Yes, thank you.
Is there a chance I can have just another minute? I have so many things I never got to say this way.
One second.
Not possible?
1 second, hold on. I'll get to you in just a second, hold on.
Thank you. Restorative justice is a process where someone who has been injured shares what injury took place and the pain that caused them. And you reflect on it and you work to repair it and to rebuild the relationship. And the Mayor White and I had this conversation this morning. And I want to thank Dick for acknowledging his error, his comment to me was a blind spot, and that there were other ways he could have handled it, his questions, and gotten the facts correct. So I really do believe that this is the first step in healing, and it is an example for our community of when you have differences, how you handle them. So thank you so very much, Dick. I accept your apology and appreciate it. I'd also like to add that Mr. John Simpson was named falsely accused in this claim, and that the Board of Ethics also found that any claim against him to be groundless. So I think that's important. I think it's very important that we learn from a society how to talk about our differences and how to accept that we may not agree, but there is a responsibility to handle them. First, to seek the facts, and ideally, to discuss differences in person before taking it to an extreme. Thank you very much, Dick. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's very tough. Thank you. I wanted to say about the fire station situation, please go talk to the fire district board. This is a private contract between two taxing districts within our community that you should represent your concerns to. They are the ones right now who have this in their hands. It is not in or the city organization's hands. So I just wanted to make that clear, that the place where you can make the difference right now is at the fire district board. But thank you for speaking tonight.
Are those public meetings?
Yes.
That the fire board holds?
I'm sorry?
Those are public meetings?
Yes, yes, and if you go to the Durango Fire Protection District website, you'll see the information there.
What did they call? I just showed up late.
Okay, did you want to make a public comment?
Yeah.
Okay, if you'd come over here, please, and state your name, and if you're a city resident, that would be great.
Hi, my name's Joe Hanrahan. I live at 40 La Plata Place, and I'm also the owner of Durango Cyclery, and hopefully will be future owner of the property that Durango Cyclery sits in right now. Yeah, I talked to Lars daily, and I just wanted to express my frustration when I learned of this decision, and really what a missed opportunity it is for the city of Durango to really fully realize what a development, possibly by the Shaw Brothers or literally anything else but a fire department at that location would mean for the city. I mean, this is an opportunity for you guys to show leadership and do what you can do, to make this not happen. I just rode through my bike from the shop over here through that spot where they're going to put that new building in the fire department, and the thought of fire trucks going in and out of there from 2nd and 13th and on to 2nd is just mind-boggling. It is not a good place for a fire department to be. It's got uphill access both ways. I don't know if you all have tried to drive up 2nd Avenue in the winter, or 13th for that matter in the winter, but it gets pretty slippery. Going down 12th is about the same thing, losing the parking and really just losing the opportunity. It's just incongruous with the city redevelopment plan. As a business owner there, I saw huge potential and was really excited to see that the redevelopment plan come to fruition. There's a lot of underutilized space on the north side of downtown there. And it really, I think, would just, this, as it's been stated, this is a 100-year decision. And it's crazy that these two independent tax districts with very little, the word is escaping me here, just kind of like not public responsibility, because obviously we all love firefighters, they're great, and we love teachers as well for the school district, but I guess accountability is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, there's just not a lot of accountability in this decision, and I think that's the most frustrating thing to most of the people here, and it really does seem like a flawed decision. I moved down here. I've only been living in Durango for just over a year. It's an amazing place. It's the best decision I've made with my life to move here. I moved down here from Ketchum, Idaho. They were going through a fire department relocation and rebuild situation when I was up there. And the amount of public comment and input and attention paid to the ingress and egress of the fire trucks was significant. And I just didn't see any of that here. And I would just urge you to do whatever you can to really put the brakes on this process and let the public comment and make this a more public and transparent process.
Thank you very much.
Can I have like a minute? I'd like some education. I have so many questions that I would love an answer. Give me a minute, please. Can I cash in my tax dollars, please?
I'm sorry, we kind of have to follow these guidelines because sometimes we get hundreds of people in here. But what I would love is if you would send an email and let us hear from you. It's very important, so thank you.
It is, I respect that, and it's hugely disappointing.
I understand.
It's massively disappointing. If we got a fire station, issue wants the police department in there too, and he wants to be a good neighbor? No, I don't think so. Really? How many of you guys live next to that site? One. The rest?
So please contact me, call me, please. I'd love to chat with you. I want to hear you.
Do we need 100 people here?
No, Ellen, please.
I mean, really, do we need 100 people here to get?
No, you need 100 people at the fire district board meeting. At this point in time, this is not in our control.
You have the power to hold a meeting on this topic.
We do, but where it would be most effective would be with the fire district board, not here. Truly, because they are the ones making these decisions right now, not us.
But you are our elected city officials. We're coming to you and asking for help.
Holly, I understand. But as Greg mentioned, by the time it gets to us, things will be much, much further down the pipeline.
Which is why we're asking for a meeting now.
Talk to the fire department. I'm going to move on. Thank you. Okay, proclamations and presentations. The City Council enjoys acknowledging those who contribute to and enhance the quality of life in Durango. Citizens may request to have the mayor present a proclamation or nominate exceptional members of the community who deserve special recognition at a city council meeting only if someone will be present to receive the proclamation or recognition. The mayor, never mind about all the rest of that. Recipients will have 5 minutes to share information about the proclamation as well as any actions community members can take to provide support or recognition. And we have two proclamations today. One of them is for Constitution Week, and the 4 people accepting the Constitution Proclamation are Janine Dobbins, Patty Joy, Sharon Hickman, and Joanne McCoy. And if you would like to join me at the podium, I'd be happy to read this and then hand it to you. And then you can respond. So are any of the 4 people here? Oh. Constitution Week 2021. Whereas September 17th, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. Whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation. Whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebration, which will commemorate the occasion. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Kim Baxter, Mayor of the City of Durango, Colorado, do proclaim September 17th through the 23rd, 2021 as Constitution Week and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties and remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Thank you. Our second proclamation is a Hispanic Heritage Month proclamation, and it will be read in Spanish first, and then it will be read in English. And I'm going to say that Gwendolyn Omaña and Ivan Robles, members of the Latinx community, will be reading it in Spanish. Are you here present, or are you going to be virtual? Ivan, you're here? And Gwendolyn's virtual. Okay. And then receiving it will be Didi DeHaro and Olivia Lopez in English and in Spanish. So after it's read in Spanish, then I will read it in English. So Ivan, do you want to start, or is Gwendolyn starting?
I will start.
Tom, is Gwendolyn there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You're not very clear to us.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I am here.
We can hear you, but your voice is not very clear. Your words are not clear. I don't know if you're too close to your microphone.
I am going to speak again. Can you hear me well?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay.
Feel free to go ahead and read. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Proclamación. Mes de la Herencia Hispana y Latinx. 15 de septiembre de 2021, 15 de octubre de 2021. Considerando que cada año desde 1968 en los Estados Unidos celebramos el Mes Nacional de la Herencia Latinx e Hispana a partir del 15 de septiembre hasta el 15 de octubre, para recordar la independencia de 6 países del régimen español y considerar las tradiciones de nuestros ancestros indígenas, así como para celebrar la diversidad cultural y las significativas contribuciones económicas, sociales y culturales de nuestra comunidad Latinx hispana en este lugar que colectivamente llamamos hogar. Y considerando que la herencia de la conquista española y la colonización de territorios tradicionales en México ha lastimado y tratado de quitar las raíces indígenas, entendemos que la herencia Latinx hispana ha sido una parte importante de la historia de Colorado. Nuestros idiomas nos han unido y seguirán siendo un elemento importante para celebrar. Y considerando que en Durango viven personas que han emigrado de comunidades indígenas de América, que han enriquecido nuestro conocimiento de otras lenguas, que han heredado creencias que representan tradiciones y culturas que hacen que este lugar sea consciente de y agradecido por las prácticas y patrias latinoamericanas y su presencia cultural en este pueblo. Y considerando que la comunidad Latinx hispana influye positivamente y contribuye a la esencia de Durango en los ámbitos de la educación, la salud, la seguridad pública, las infraestructuras, el desarrollo económico, las artes, la gobernanza, el transporte y la equidad lingüística. Y considerando que en menos de 20 años los Latinx hispanos tendrán y representarán casi 1/3 de la población de Colorado, los Latinx hispanos de Durango son personas comprometidas con la democracia, la inclusión y o las oportunidades de equidad y justicia social.
Y considerando que los líderes locales latinohispanos e indígenas y sus descendientes han hecho enormes contribuciones en los campos de negocios, leyes, política, educación, servicio a la comunidad, artes, ciencia, agricultura y equidad alimentaria y de salud. Y considerando que, a pesar de la gran influencia y contribución de la comunidad latinohispana, los legados de la conquista española y la colonización siguen presentes en muchas áreas de nuestra comunidad, y la comunidad latinohispana sigue enfrentándose con la actualidad de los determinantes sociales de salud, y considerando que los miembros de la comunidad y los responsables por tomar decisiones deben esforzarse por acabar con los determinantes sociales de salud y en cambio de generar oportunidades para una mayor calidad de vida e inclusión en todas las áreas de la sociedad a través de la creación de una comunidad equitativa que involucre la práctica y la cultura del antirracismo sistemático, la antidiscriminación, los salarios justos, el acceso equitativo a los servicios médicos, la vivienda y las oportunidades económicas, recursos y respaldos educativos y una comunidad libre de persecución, amenazas y miedo. Y considerando que necesitamos políticas a nivel local, estatal y federal que aborden estas expansiones y creen vías accesibles a las necesidades básicas, a los servicios dignos y a un ambiente seguro. Y considerando que el objetivo del mes de la herencia latina e hispana es crear una mayor conciencia de las significativas contribuciones de dichos miembros de la comunidad a la cultura de los Estados Unidos, ilustrar la diversidad y la riqueza de la comunidad latina-hispana, fomentar una mayor curiosidad sobre la historia y el patrimonio cultural y celebrar con orgullo las diversas identidades de la comunidad latino-hispana. Ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que Kim Baxter, alcalde de Durango, Colorado, por la presente proclamación a partir del 15 de septiembre hasta el 15 de octubre, como el mes de la herencia hispana-latina, e invitar a la comunidad a ponerse de pie y a promover a nuestra comunidad latino-hispana y a celebrar las profundas raíces de la influencia hispana en el sureste de Colorado y reflexionar sobre todas las contribuciones que los hispanos latinos han hecho en el pasado y seguirán haciendo en el futuro. Ciudad de Durango. Muchas gracias.
Dee and Olivia, if you'd like to join me up here. I'll read the English version and then present you with both languages. Proclamation for Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th, 2021 through October 15th, 2021. Whereas each year since 1968 in the United States, we celebrate National Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th, to remember the independence of 6 countries from the Spaniards' regimen and to consider the traditions of their indigenous ancestors, as well as to celebrate the cultural diversity and the significant economic, social, and cultural contributions of our Latinx Hispanic community in this place that we collectively call home. And whereas the heritage of the Spanish conquest and colonization of traditional territories in Mexico has hurt and tried to take away indigenous roots, we understand that Latinx Hispanic heritage has been an important part of Colorado's history, and their diverse languages have unified us and will continue to be an important element to celebrate. And whereas Durango is home to people who have migrated from indigenous communities of the Americas, have enriched our knowledge of other languages, have inherited beliefs that represent traditions and cultures that make this place aware of and grateful for Latin American homelands and their cultural presence in this town. And whereas the Latinx Hispanic community positively influences and contributes to the essence of Durango in the areas of education, health, public safety, infrastructure, economic development, the arts, governance, transportation, and language equity. And whereas in less than 20 years, Latinx Hispanic will represent nearly 1/3 of Colorado's population, Latinx Hispanic, in Durango are people committed to democracy, inclusion, and/or opportunities for equity and social justice. And whereas local Hispanic, Latinx, and indigenous leaders and their descendants have made enormous contribution in the fields of business, law, politics, education, community service, the arts, science, agriculture, food equity, and health. And whereas despite the great influence and contributions of the Latinx Hispanic community, the legacies of the Spanish conquest and colonization are still present in many areas of our community and society, and Latinx Hispanic people continue to be challenged by prevalent social determinants of health. And whereas community members and decision makers should strive to end social determinants of health and should create opportunities for a higher quality of life and inclusion in all areas of society by building an equitable community that embeds a practice and culture of anti-racism in systems, anti-discrimination, fair wages, equitable access to medical care, housing, and economic opportunity, educational support and resources, and a community free from persecution, threats, and fear. And whereas we need policies at the local, state, and federal levels that address this growth and create accessible pathways to basic needs, dignified services, and a safe environment. And whereas the goal of Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month is to create greater awareness of the significant contributions of said community members to USA culture, illustrate the diversity and richness of the Latinx Hispanic community, foster greater curiosity about cultural history and heritage, and proudly celebrate the diverse identities of the Latinx Hispanic community. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Kim Baxter, Mayor of Durango, Colorado, do hereby proclaim September 15th to October 15th as Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month, and invite the community to stand up and promote our Latinx Hispanic community, celebrate the deep roots of Latinx Hispanic influence in Southwest Colorado, and reflect on all the contributions Latinx Hispanic have made in the past and will continue to make into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Baxter and City Council, for this proclamation. We're very happy to receive it. And even though we're grateful for this proclamation, we hope it's the beginning of a new era in Durango where longtime Hispano, Latinx families and newer immigrants are treated with dignity and respect. The words in this proclamation are very beautiful and meaningful, but we need to really make them ring true in our community. Thank you again for the proclamation, but let's all, I wish every citizen or every resident of Durango could read it, but let's all work together so that it's not just hollow words, but let's make it real.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Yo voy a leer en español. I'm going to read in Spanish. I am making the assumption that nobody in the council speaks Spanish. Am I right?
I do not.
So I'm wondering if anybody is going to translate.
I asked if the translator could do so. I don't know if we were able to accomplish that or not.
Okay, well, what I can offer is to read it in Spanish and then in the public comment, perhaps highlight it in English, if it's okay with all of you.
Just so you know, I do speak Spanish, but it's probably better if you do it in English as well, because...
Okay. I will do it in Spanish because that was the initial agreement, if it's okay. And then, of course, I will try to summarize it in English. Llegué a los Estados Unidos hace muchos años, en 1993, como una inmigrante primero, y como tal vez muchos de los abuelos de todos los que están aquí, que todos... La mayoría de las gentes que estamos acá somos hijos o descendientes de inmigrantes, porque recordemos que los únicos que no son inmigrantes son los nativos americanos. Llegué con $80 y con miles de sueños para lograr, como muchas otras personas que estaban acá. Quiero darles las gracias infinitas a la ciudad de Durango, a la alcaldesa Kim Baxter, pero más que nada quiero dar las gracias a la comunidad que para mí es lo más importante, a la comunidad que ha sido instrumental para que la ciudad reconozca nuestra importancia. Es sin duda esa voz, la de todos nosotros, que no debe ni puede permanecer silenciada ya más, para que así podamos continuar con los cambios que merecemos de una equidad y de una justicia. Porque si hay justicia, hay sanidad, y si hay sanidad, hay paz. Aceptamos con infinito respeto esta proclamación. Al mismo tiempo, con el mismo respeto, le pedimos a ustedes, City Councils, que hagan ejercicio de su poder político para no solo extender la inclusividad a través de papeles y proclamaciones como estas, pero con acción, porque es una proclamación. proclamamos la acción. La acción de hacer cambios que beneficien a todos los habitantes de esta ciudad, no solo a los privilegiados. La acción de tomar en cuenta que aunque los hispanos y los latinos representamos un pequeño segmento de la comunidad y quizás somos pequeños en números, somos inmensamente grandes con nuestras contribuciones y con nuestros valores, ya sea con las culturas, con nuestra comida, con nuestro folclore, con nuestra calidad humana, con nuestras tradiciones. Y recordemos que también contribuimos económicamente a través de nuestro trabajo y de nuestros impuestos, porque somos trabajadores esenciales. Sí, somos trabajadores del campo, somos los obreros, somos los que trabajamos en los restaurantes, somos los limpiadores de las casas, de los jardines, los que cuidamos los niños, los que lavamos los platos, los que hacemos la comida. Somos esa comunidad. En este momento de crisis global, quiero pedirle a ustedes, City Councils, que debemos abogar para terminar la invisibilidad y las divisiones. Le pedimos a ustedes que nos vean, véannos. Aquí estamos. No somos invisibles. Y que se pregunten a ustedes mismos, ¿cómo nos pueden hacer participar? ¿Cómo pueden ustedes incluirnos a nosotros? Porque la invisibilidad es algo que duele y que no nos permite integrarnos. Queremos participar sin miedo. Queremos que los que podemos votar lo hagamos sabiendo que nuestro voto va a contar. Que si hablamos otro idioma, no tengamos que sentirnos menos porque lo hacemos. Que podamos caminar por las calles de Durango sin sentir que estamos en problemas. Que podamos confiar en el departamento de policía. Que podamos recibir los recursos y todas las oportunidades como todo otro ciudadano de esta comunidad. Que podemos integrarnos con respeto, sin renunciar a nuestra cultura y que podamos con mucho amor vivir en paz. Eso es el sentido de la justicia. Estamos comprometidos a colaborar con ustedes y esperamos nos puedan seguir escuchando y apoyando. Que podamos incluir a todos los miembros de esta comunidad, inmigrantes y no, latinos y no, los que nacieron aquí y los que no nacieron aquí, incluyendo y recordando a los habitantes de las áreas históricas, las cuales nunca se mencionan en los párrafos históricos académicos. La comunidad del Parral, la comunidad de Santa Rita, sí, incluyendo a todos. Es un gran honor y humildad que después de casi 30 años de yo vivir en esta comunidad, podemos por primera vez aceptar una proclamación a la hispanidad. Muchas gracias y que viva Durango, Colorado.
Thank you very much, Olivia.
Yeah, of course.
Onward to 6.3, Durango Police Department Officer Recognition. Chief Bramer, is that your cue? Maybe we'll give a minute here to let people leave who want to leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
This was my note.
Okay.
For some reason.
Are we awaiting someone or are we? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize he had walked out, so.
So fun today. Sometimes I'm very happy not to be in the hot seat. Come back.
Kevin is AOCP, by the way.
Well, I was just like, the nerve.
was like, I think he is. And I was like, you are, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, I thought so.
Right. Anything to do?
Yeah.
Councilor Bosman?
No. I didn't know he's going to the bathroom.
I think so, but would you like to wait? I don't know what happened to him, so.
It's your pleasure, Mayor. I believe he's right here. He's coming out of the bathroom.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm Bob Brammer. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Durango. And tonight I would like to take the opportunity to recognize one of our own officers for an upcoming award that he's going to be presented. As you'll know, that y'all appropriated some money through a grant funding opportunity that we had from the state of Colorado recently. It was for LEAF funding and HVE funding. LEAF stands for Law Assistance Funds, and HVE stands for High Visibility Enforcement Funds. Each one of those are monies that are set aside for DUI enforcement to bolster our normal patrols as we try to combat the problem of drunk and drug driving on our roadways. Every year across the United States, about 10,000 people die as a result of drunk driving and drugs driving. So it's a very serious problem that every community across this country faces, and in Colorado, we're not immune to that. Every year, there's selections made through submissions from individual agencies across the state to the Colorado Department of Transportation and MAD, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And this year, on September 29th, Detective Chris Winchester, who's right here with me this evening, is going to be awarded the Traffic Champion Award, which is for the DUI Officer of the Year. So out of every officer in the state of Colorado, Chris was selected this year to represent the state of Colorado as the traffic champion through his efforts of deterring and educating our public and hopefully saving lives, which I know he did over the course of 2020. So I just want to take this opportunity to recognize him formally in front of you all and know that your contributions and your appropriations that you've allowed us to pursue do make a difference to our community. And he is a result of that. And on September 29th, he's going to be representing us proudly in front of the rest of the state of Colorado and accepting this award. So Chris, come on up.
This can be your practice, right?
All right, so I'll be the first first Mayor, City Council, thank you guys for allowing me the time to be here. Chief, you as well, appreciate the nomination for this award. I'm gonna be the first person to tell you that this, even though it's an individual award that I'm receiving, by no means is this an individual effort. Our job requires teamwork in every facet of our job, day in and day out. And I'd like to personally thank my partners of 2020, one of the toughest years we've had as a community, as a nation. Officers Harvey, Kelly, Griffith, Jackson, Sergeant Engel, Sergeant Conroy. That was the team for that year. And we did this as a team. And this award is just as much theirs as mine. Oh, sorry. Also for you guys that actually help get that funding for us to do these DUI enforcements. I appreciate that. Goes a long way. So you guys have a hand in that as well for this award for the state. And our community members who are our eyes and ears. Each and every community member that has called in an intoxicated or impaired driver, this award is just as much theirs as it is mine. So I, with honor, accept this award and recommendation. And it's an honor to represent you guys in the city of Durango in Denver next week.
Congratulations. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, on to 6.4, Durango Police Department Core Team Update. Chief Bramer.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Bob Brammer, Chief of Police for the City of Durango. This evening, we are going to give a mid-year update for our co-responder team. As you all know, because it's a City Council funded program, it's a partnership between the Durango Police Department and with Access Mental Health. Our core team, who's supposed to be here right now, unfortunately is not here because of the fact that they're actually intervening on a suicidal call at the moment. So Instead, you get the leadership of the teams to be able to give you an update of everything and the progressions that we've had thus far with both our success stories and some of our challenges. And we actually have a family as well here that can also share some personalized stories of what our team has been able to accomplish this year. So I'm going to turn it over to them because it's their show.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for letting us come up here and give you an update on what we've got going on with the core team. Again, I'm Commander Ray Shoup with the Durango Police Department. We spoke earlier in the council meeting. This is Sergeant Sweetwood. Will is our direct supervisor for the core team, so he supervises them day in and day out on the daily tasks that they've got going on. We have Molly Rodriguez, who was going to phone in today. I don't know how we can get her up, but
Let's check. Tom, is Molly Rodriguez on the line?
She is, Mayor. I'm going to bring her in right now.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Molly. We can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, Molly. So what we're doing with the core team, as we talked about earlier, is we're pairing law enforcement officers with access mental health and first response to patients in crisis in our community. The one benefit well, there's multiple benefits that come out of that, but for law enforcement as a whole, we don't understand exactly how to deal with the mental illness side of things very well. We know how to deal with law and criminal side of things, and sometimes we bring a hammer to a problem that doesn't have a nail. So with co-response, we're now bringing the proper tools with us to help defuse these situations and bring people into the right mindset and get them into the right help where we don't necessarily have all the resources to do that. So we were going to have some personal stories from the core team because those are the guys and gals on the ground who are actually doing the work and intervening with these folks. One of the huge benefits that they've seen come out of this is they establish relationships before people are in crisis, right? So when somebody's in crisis, they're not really all that keen on listening to what we have to say or listening to reason or where we need things to go or how to get them the proper help. And what our core team is doing is establishing those relationships before someone's in crisis. So they can go in and make these relationships, and then when somebody is in crisis, they have a long-standing relationship. It's not just somebody that's new coming to the door. They know who they are, they know what they're about, and they know that they're there to help. And so it's really helped to diffuse a lot of situations. Like I told you before, we've handled 294 calls so far this year. That was back to early September, and 270 of those have resulted in follow-ups. So when somebody does a follow-up, they're spending 3 to 5 days with that person, really plugging them into the right resources and then getting them moved to the right places. So I'm going to turn things over to Molly for a little bit so she can talk about the actual statistics and what these all mean, because I know you guys have these in your packet. And Molly, if you want to take it over.
Sure, absolutely. I'm sorry I couldn't be sitting in front of you guys today. I was really looking forward to being with you all, but thank you for the opportunity to zoom in. Like Commander Shoup indicated, we've been doing a lot of really awesome work in the community since our onset at the end of February. Our statistics show that we have just over 290 calls as of early September. I don't want to read all of the information to you, as I know you have it in your packet. But some of the things that really stood out to me as the clinical management of this team was the percentages. So what we were looking at in creating this program in collaboration with DPD was prevention, community intervention, and referral. What we're seeing is only 10% of people who have had an intervention with the co-responder team were taken into custody, protective custody, for either mental health or substance-related issues. That's pretty awesome, considering the number of people that we've been seeing in the community. And what that really means is that only 10% of people needed a higher level intervention than a community supported treatment. And that also includes, that 10% includes admissions to the social detox facility located in Three Springs. 78% of the calls that came to the team were direct dispatches through 911. from a mental health professional standpoint, this is incredible because those are 78% of those calls are calls that we would have never seen in the community mental health sphere until they escalated, or potentially not at all. 187 of the people that were seen were treated in place, which means that they had a successful intervention in the community that led to referral, follow-up by the team, or potentially the person, declined services at this time. It's really important for our team to also acknowledge the autonomy of the individuals with whom we're seeing. And so there is that aspect of striking while the iron's hot, giving people an opportunity, choices, kind of a pivot point, and then circling back and saying, all right, how are things going now? And giving people those options for choice. Of all of our calls, only 6 resulted in arrest, and those could have been as a result of an incident that occurred on scene or an outstanding warrant. Demographically, we're seeing that males are utilizing the service at almost twice as much as females in the community, and that the greatest age bracket is between age 31 and 50, then followed by 51 to 70 years old. One of the documents that you might want to take a peek at is the intervention details. It looks a little crazy making when you look at it, but what I wanted to show by providing that data is really the amount of types of intervention that take place on any given call. And so that intervention detail lists all of the combinations of interventions that could take place as a result of that 911 dispatch. And so it's not just a behavioral health issue. It's not just a homelessness issue. It's not just for de-escalation. It can be a combination of many things that require a variety of different interventions. Really early on in our work, there was a story that I'll share because my team members are out on a call. Our first team of Officer Kinney and Matt Teague responded to a 911 call in the community, and the community member was struggling with homelessness and substance abuse issues related to alcohol. The first call was one of many calls, but it resulted in self-dispatches where the team was able to connect on a very personal level while also working on motivation for treatment with this individual. That person was seen multiple times over the course of about a month, and at some point during their interventions decided that they were going to make the decision to seek services and support through the Fort Lyon program by accessing our detox facility and then later admitting to Fort Lyon on an application. The team knew when the admission date was, continued to follow up with this person, and on the day that they admitted to detox, they said that they did not remember what had happened that day, and that if it wasn't for the core team, they wouldn't have made it. It's documented in their clinical chart. And they also had some community members in the homeless community with whom they were friends with. And those people too said, well, if they can do it, maybe I could do it too. And so those people also chose to begin to investigate access and treatment and access and care. And that early success that we had by the team, I thought really exemplified the work that is being done in building relationship, offering choice and support, and then helping people get engaged in treatment.
And we do want to give you guys an opportunity to listen to some folks that are personally. One of the things that Molly talked about was being able to treat people and triage people and keep them in place. And that's a huge thing for our community because right now we don't have resources to help these folks locally. So if we do have to take someone out of a home, they're going to Denver, they're going to Fort Collins, or they're going to Grand Junction. They're not staying locally and they're not around their local ties, and that's huge for family members to be able to help and assist them through whatever they're going through. So I'm gonna turn it over to Will for just a minute, and he's gonna talk about the team and some of the stuff that they've done, and then introduce our guest speakers for the night who are gonna talk about their personal experience with the core team.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly.
More important than I am.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to come here and present what we're doing with the core team. I oversee the 2 officers is Jonathan Meisner and Forrest Kinney, and the 2 clinicians that work with them are Elizabeth Gleason Matt Teague. And, they've all formed a working relationship just like we do as officers when we work with other officers, which is integral. The nice thing is that they get to intermix with each other. So you don't have just one officer working with just one clinician and one clinician just working with one officer. Because of the way their schedules are, they get to overlap. They get to work with all of them. The one thing that we noticed was from social media and stuff, doing a study from Zen City, was from the community itself, their comments since we've been doing this, and especially since the 2 articles that we've had on the Herald on this, there's been a 94% positive reception from the community at large, which I think is more important than anything else, because it means the community is given buy-in to this, and it helps us, facilitate and going forward with all this. And it's not just, they're saying this is long over needed, and I think we as police officers are realizing that this is a big help to us, because it alleviates an awful lot of stress for the officers when before, as Commander Shoup said, we were showing up with a hammer for no nail, and you're making an arrest, and it becomes stressful for everybody, and then that person has a distaste towards us and any kind of help. This is helping foster relationships, and that's exactly what we need to do, is foster these relationships. And the big thing is you have people that are coming out of this where they are given tools to help deal with this, and they're calling for the core team members when they're in crisis. And an example of this is Margaret Austin and her husband Clay and their son Ben. And I'm gonna have Maggie come up and talk about her son and the interactions that they've had with our department, the clinicians, and our police officers.
Hi. Hi. My name is Maggie, and I am the parent. We are the parents of a 31-year-old with severe mental illness. It's been a lifetime deal. He had developmental issues from the word go, Tourette syndrome, autism, and then was diagnosed with schizoaffective bipolar. It's been a rough ride, and we lived in Albuquerque before we moved here, and I can tell you, my son really feared the police. We didn't have really positive interactions with the police or the system. He's had a rough year since the pandemic. He's been hospitalized 6 times. One of those times, he jumped the fence at the ATU here in Durango, and the police were called. And when they pulled up to him, he had his hands up and he said, "Don't shoot me, don't shoot me," because there'd been quite a lot of that over in Albuquerque. But anyway, so you can see where he started with his relationship with the police. So he's quite involved, and he tends to have outbursts, whether sometimes they are suicidal, sometimes he gets activated and he goes into fight or flight, and it's really hard to get him to slow down. He wants to argue with you. He lives in an apartment building, so he's disturbing the entire building. The first call the core team answered, he was yelling in his room, and he was yelling so loud that I don't know how many 911 calls went in, a bunch. And I called and made sure he got the core team. Because I had talked to Officer Shoup when he was putting this in place with Ben in the car with me, and we were both really excited about it. So Ben knew who he was getting. And so Officer Meisner and Elizabeth showed up, and Ben was yelling at everybody and cussing, and it's pretty intimidating. Ben is not a threat to others. He might be a threat to himself, but he was yelling at everyone, and they were so zen. The officer, Ben was yelling in his face, and his expression didn't change. He was so calm, and at one point, he made a joke, and Ben had never seen that before, and he laughed. And they gave him some space, and he went upstairs, and actually some of the residents in the apartment hugged him and kind of calmed him down and brought him back downstairs. And he apologized, Ben did, and sort of chatting with the core team. And really developed a rapport at that point. And, we were trying to get him to go into the ATU, but at that point he was so calm, he said, I will if I need to, and he didn't. But anyway, and we had another call this last weekend where Ben was suicidal. And again, the core team came out. My husband actually went to this call instead of me. But, they really try to give Ben space and not activate him further. And it's very difficult at an apartment because there's people kind of crowding around the core team and crowding around Ben, which is not helpful. But they remained really calm and they gave him space, and he did eventually calm down. Now, after both of those incidents, Officer Meisner called me and we really talked through, he opened my eyes to some things that I hadn't thought about before. We talked about the autism piece and how maybe the hug helps him calm. He made suggestions like, Ben breaks everything he touches. He's been that way, it's developmental. If you put a flower in his hand, he'll crush it. And so he's broken a bunch of pair of glasses, and Officer Meisner had some suggestions about how to get, less expensive glasses. And just really getting into that, and also just getting to know Ben and watching him on a very intuitive level and helping us to see what's really going on, because I'm kind of used to him and I kind of go into fight or flight too. And he was able to say, if we give him space, he will usually calm and come down and apologize. And so they're learning Ben and learning what techniques work. And Ben does get very remorseful, and he'll come and tell you, I'm sorry. And this past time when Clay went, the next day he goes, Mom, I was really mean to Jonathan. And I did not know Officer Meisner's first name. I'm like, who's Jonathan? And he goes, I'm going to call him and apologize. So they're developing this rapport. And just like I think Officer Shoup said, I would love it someday if Ben can make the call himself and ask them to come over, because he really is learning to trust them. And again, on this call, Officer Meisner, it was so funny. He said one of the other police officer with him, which I don't know that police officer, was joking, calling him a remarkable idiot, and Ben cracked up. He's just never heard police joke like that. And it just completely shifts everything. But it just makes me so hopeful. If you have somebody in your family with severe mental illness, the services are not great. We want Ben to be as independent as possible. So we got him an apartment and want him to use community resources. My husband and I are on the verge of retiring, and we're not always going to be here. So if something happens to us, we want him to have a network of support, and the core team, I guarantee you, is going to be a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how thankful I am.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing.
Council, I appreciate the opportunity for us to present that to you and just give you a kind of a personal perspective. From our perspective, sometimes I sit behind a desk most of the time, so I don't see this stuff day to day, but it really impacts people's lives. Mm-hmm. So thank you for listening to our presentation and listening to the update. I hope it was informative for you. And thank you again. Have a good night.
Your work is greatly appreciated. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much for telling the story of Ben.
All right, on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 9. May we have a reading of the consent agenda, please?
7.1 is approval of the minutes for the September 7th, 2021 City Council study session. And item 7.2 is discussion and possible action concerning the cancellation of the December 21, 2021 City Council study session and regular meeting due to the Christmas holiday.
Thank you. Do we have any agenda items to remove?
I would just like to make a comment about one, if I may. I don't necessarily need to remove it, but I'd like to state something, or I will remove it and then it'll be brief.
Well, so do you want action taken on it, or could it be done during the discussion part after the motion is made?
That's a better suggestion. I'll do it in the discussion.
Okay. Any agenda items to be removed?
Yeah, I would like to remove 7.1.
Okay. Any others? All right. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda item 7.2?
A motion to approve agenda item 7.2.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, thank you. Great suggestion, Mayor. I think it's really important. I am grateful that we might be removing December 21 from the from our schedule. I really think it's very important that we keep December 14th available for all of council because of the budget discussion. And so it's one of those cases where I'm going to ask us to commit to having that should we not reach consensus on the budget at the first Tuesday in December. I believe we have to approve the budget by December 15th. So I would like to ask my colleagues to commit to keeping that time available should we need it.
All righty. Any other discussion? Nope. Maybe we have a roll call, please.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. So item 7.1, approval of minutes September 7th, 2021, City Council study session. Councilor Bosmans?
Yeah, I had 3 comments here. One on the draft trash and recycling rate study comments, minutes. I remember there was clear direction given to maintain the existing rates, which is not mentioned, as well as the internal review at a higher level before studies are being done. And I suggest to clarify that better in the minutes. On page 6 of 8, I'm not a former member of the Multimodal Advisory Board in 2014, and it's $6.2 million, not $6.2. On page 8 of 8, Council and staff agreed to evaluate the option replacing the sewer lines versus installing in situ sewer liners and bring this back to us for review regarding the North College and Delwood projects. And that was also not clearly mentioned. So I would like to see that corrected.
Is there a motion to either approve the minutes as original or approve as corrected?
I make a motion to approve the minutes with the corrections that I just read out.
Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can have some discussion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, my discussion is, unfortunately, I got stuck in a construction jam in the West, and I missed a portion of this meeting, so I'm questioning the appropriateness of my approving the minutes since I missed a good hour of that meeting.
Oh, so you would then want to abstain, yes?
I don't have any issues with what I attended, but I do have I wasn't able to attend the session.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion?
I had a little bit of a hard time hearing, so I think that it sounded like one of them was a correction of a data point, and if that's a correct correction, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, it was all, the minutes basically do not reflect either what was said and specifically agreed to, and there were a couple of small typos that I pointed out.
What was said by you or what was said by us? I was confused.
I think it's easiest if they listen to the meeting and word it correctly the way it was. But I remember speaking that I mentioned to Lloyd is that the direction? What is the direction? And you guys repeated exactly the direction, and there was even a bit confusion on that point, because why would I ask that specific clarification, confirmation that that direction was given?
Okay.
And then I didn't see it in the minutes, so I thought that was definitely something we want to have there.
And then there was one that was about, like, it mentioned that you were on the multimodal board.
Yeah, that's a typo.
Okay.
I mean, I am on the multimodal, but I think it mentions that I was there in 2014.
Okay,
so
got it, okay.
I'm not there in 2014.
Okay,
So irrespective of this particular set of minutes, one of the things that we've been trying to do is a who does what when afterwards. So maybe one of the ways to deal with this is a who, what, when. For example, if a decision was made that staff was going to do this, blah, 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 that could be part of the who, what, when, and be added as part of the minutes. And that might help with the feeling that there's things missing. Just a suggestion.
I'm fine with I guess I'm still so confused. I'm fine with the corrections of the errors, like your position or whatever, but the direction, I'm confused as, did we give the direction? To keep rates the same? I don't feel like we did that, did we? Did we do that?
So the option that you chose was option, I think it was A. I don't know if it was 1 or A.
Right.
But, and that was to not have the rates changed based upon having a new trash and recycle facility. And
So aren't we looking at all the options still?
we were, but I believe maybe we could table this till all of us can have a chance to
I'm so confused.
May I
do some research
suggest
on this.
just to listen to the meetings?
Right, that's
It's
what I'm saying.
recorded
So table
and
this.
fix it.
Table this until the future, and maybe staff would take a listen to that and clarify that for us for our next meeting? Okay. Is that all right with you, Councilor Bosmans, if we table it? Do we need a motion for that, Dirk?
Or a motion to approve everything except for that which tabled is fine by me.
I submit a
just say
motion
let's do the whole
for
minutes.
making the corrections according to the recording and according to some of the points that I pointed out.
Well, I personally would want to read the revised minutes, so, do we need a motion?
I think we need to withdraw the motion
Okay.
or vote on it and vote it down,
Yeah.
but you do have a motion on the floor that needs to be dealt with.
Okay, I will withdraw the motion and I would motion to postpone this item until someone listens to the recording, makes the corrections, some of which I pointed out.
Perfect, sounds great.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Okay, so we've dealt with that. All right, so now we're on to item 10.1, discussion and possible action concerning a motion to convene an executive session to receive legal advice on specific legal questions related to lodger's tax with the city attorney as permitted in CRS 24-6-402, 4B. Do we have a motion to do so?
I move to convene an executive session for the purposes explained in item 10.1.
I'll second.
Any discussion? No? May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Hold on. That's the right paper. Hold on. All right. I reconvene this meeting at 7:56 p.m. For the record, council met in an executive session to receive legal advice on specific legal questions related to lodger's tax with the city attorney as permitted in CRS 24-6-402 4B. No decisions were made. If anyone who participated in the executive session believes the discussion went beyond the proper scope of the executive session, please state your objections now. Seeing none, the next item of business is 11.1.1, a public hearing to consider an ordinance authorizing a lease with Agile Space Industries, Inc. at the airport. Welcome, Tony.
Good evening, councilors. Tony Vicari, Aviation Director at the Durango La Plata County Airport. Give me one moment to pull up the presentation. So good evening. It's just a short presentation to open up a public hearing to consider an ordinance authorizing a lease with Agile Space Industries at the Durango La Plata County Airport. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so brief background here. So Agile Space Industries, local business here in Durango that does currently hold a ground lease at the airport. That ground lease is located northeast of the primary airfield at the airport. It totals just shy of 2 acres in total size. It was established in 2013 for the purpose of Agile Space constructing and establishing improvements on that parcel that specifically facilitated the testing of liquid propellant spacecraft propulsion systems. So essentially it's a test site to test their in-flight propulsion systems prior to space travel. Agile Space Industries has submitted to the airport a ground lease application seeking to relinquish their existing lease, which currently has a term ending in 2023, and simultaneously execute a new lease, principally to allow them to expand the investment horizon in that particular parcel. They do anticipate investing between $5 and $10 million in that site over the next 5 years, assuming that that lease of a longer term is indeed executed. That would be in addition to the approximately $2.5 million in current improvements on site that they use. Just for orientation, here's a quick shot of where that lease premise lies. You can see on the left side of the screen there, the airport terminal and commercial facilities. So this site is located on the east side of the overall airport property around County Road 309A on land that is otherwise undeveloped and is designated for a non-aeronautical development for the airport. Just looking at the proposed lease, just a quick couple of high points here relative to the terms of the lease. For reference, the overall lease premise, as mentioned earlier, is just about 1.75 acres or 76,000 square feet. Allowed uses of the premise remain consistent with the proposed new lease as they are in the existing, which is principally to allow for the operation and maintenance of space propulsion testing site. As mentioned earlier, the current lease rather is set to expire in 2023. The proposed lease has a base term of 5 years with 4 5-year conditional options available beyond that for a total potential lease term of 25 years. Those option periods are conditional upon lease compliance and as well as compatibility with the airport master plan over time. The rent on the lease is proposed to increase from just over 15 cents per square foot per year up to 30 cents per square foot per year with the proposed new lease. It does incorporate periodic adjustments for CPI and also has a reassessment clause in it in the event that commercial water is brought to the premise. The current premises do not have either water or wastewater services provided to them as of today, so they're effectively unimproved site. Benefits to the airport of executing this lease ensure locking up long-term rent income beyond the existing horizon of 2023, diversifying our revenue streams. The airport is generally reliant on aeronautical and airline revenues, so increasing our overall rent position as it relates to non-aeronautical revenue streams helps to diversify our revenue and make us more resilient as it relates to potential economic disruptions that would disproportionately impact us in the event that airline traffic is decreased over time. Also, we do have the potential for future expansion of the test site. This is an ongoing conversation with Agile Space that you could see brought back before you in the coming months or years. But this was the first step here, which was executing a new lease with the existing site to give them that longer investment period and potentially in the future bring forward a longer or an expanded footprint there. Regional economic impact of this company is certainly significant in terms of maintaining their presence within our area and keeping those jobs in our community, which are very much high-paying, long-lasting community impact type positions here in Durango. And it's also, in our opinion, the highest and best use of what's otherwise a vacant and unimproved parcel at the airport. So a couple of regulatory and legal notes. The airport layout plan, which is a guiding document approved by the FAA for the airport, does depict this area as non-aeronautical in use. One might look at what Agile Space does and indeed call it aeronautical, but in our world of airports, aeronautical is strictly related to the need for the access to the airfield, i.e. the runway and taxiway system. Agile Space's current use does not demand that, so they are considered in our world non-aeronautical, but their use is currently consistent with this parcel, which is indeed non-aeronautical as approved by the FAA. There is an active county land use permit for the existing site. The Airport Advisory Commission did review this proposed lease and unanimously recommend its approval during its August meeting. And lastly, the city attorney has also reviewed the draft lease agreement. Just doing a quick overview on the fiscal impact, you can see that the prior rent and current, mentioned earlier, that rent rate is approximately doubling from the initial rent, or current rent rather, to 30 cents per square foot annually for a total annual ground rent of the existing premise for about $23,000. And with that, I would just turn it back to the city council.
Wonderful. So I will open the public hearing. Does the Agile industry have a presentation to make?
I do not believe they do.
No, okay. And we have one public comment. I'm not certain if it's Larry Hansen. Okay, I think that was the person that signed up for the other one too, so I don't think we have that. I will go ahead then and close the, unless there's someone, Tom, is there anybody virtual?
There is not, Mayor.
Okay, wonderful. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing then, and City Council, do you have questions of staff?
I'd just like to say that the mayor, Councilor Buell, and I went out to Agile Technologies, and it's impressive what they're doing and the rocket scientists they have employed. But I also wanted Tony to acknowledge that they spoke so highly of you and your team and how great you were to work with. And so I just wanted to publicly thank you for that, for working to keep this business here in the county. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was not part of the initial group that helped to establish the test site here at the airport, so they definitely deserve credit as well, but we enjoy working with them and all businesses. Certainly, first and foremost, making sure that that type of business is consistent with the land use needs of the airport to keep our primary mission in place. But other than that, we certainly view the benefits as being very much commingling between the airport as well as the greater regional economy.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments? And I would say that I believe one of the things the city can do to support this business as well as others and watch them expand is to create some more housing for all their employees. All right, do we need a motion? We need a motion on this? No.
I believe we need a motion to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute a lease with Agile Space Industries, Inc. at the airport.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a roll call, please? Ms. Phillips.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Yosef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
All right, under legislative and policy related hearings, we have another one, 11.1.2, a public hearing to consider amendments to the Land Use and Development Code. And we have Dan and Scott with us, yes? Awesome.
Thank you, Mayor. 1 second while I bring up the presentation. I'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to take a brief moment to introduce this next block of hearings. There's 5 that are community development related. We know it's already late. You have a lot on your agenda, so we're going to do our part to keep it concise, get you the information you need to make a good decision, but also try and move efficiently through that. So that's our goal. Some of these hearings are very straightforward and we'll go very quickly through them and mainly just respond to your questions. Others need a little more explanation. This first one got a round of public comments that have all been received by staff, reviewed. You've seen them as well. They'll be entered into the record for this hearing. But a lot of them were a little misguided, and so we just wanted to clarify that on the front end in the hopes that that'll help this hearing go a little bit smoother. A lot of those comments were regarding what's called the Multiplex Initiative that staff has been working on for months now. We've done public outreach, we've done some surveys, but that is not what's before you tonight. So it's very important to distinguish that. There's going to be additional community meetings, community outreach on that initiative before we bring it to Planning Commission and ultimately Council for code amendments to implement that program. So that's really the main thing to keep in mind as we dig into this first round of text amendments. They are housing related and they do relate to existing multifamily zones. So these are not changes to the zones we call EN1, EN2, EN3. Those are our neighborhoods downtown, Animas City, the avenues. There are no changes to those zoning districts tonight. It's all related to what we call EN multifamily. So they're already zoned for multifamily uses. We're just tweaking some of how those uses are governed. We're not allowing new uses in established neighborhoods. And so I want to give you sort of that peace of mind, and hopefully to those who are listening, this isn't an attempt at all to sneak anything through. These are just adjustments to existing multifamily. These initial changes are relatively minor, but like I said, we are preparing a package of text amendments that we think will be helpful in implementing the housing plan and achieving the housing goals adopted by council. And so we just wanted to touch on the framework behind all of our housing related text amendments that we're going to be bringing before you. These have been vetted by our Code Alignment Working Group, which you're aware of, and are obviously set within this context that we're all familiar of, that you've given us very clear direction that you want to see us working on. And I think one of the stats that really stood out to me from a presentation last week and to the rest of the staff is this chart on the side that shows 68% of our regional housing supply are single-family homes, yet only 28% of our households in the region are either large or moderately sized households. So there's this disproportionate supply of housing to the needs of the community. And that's really what's at the heart of the Multiplex Initiative, of ADUs, of some of these other ways to encourage different types of housing. We have an overabundance of single-family housing. We're trying to correct and adjust that. All of this work, like I said, is done in light of the policies in the housing plan, the comprehensive plan, and the strategic plan, and based on the direction from council. We do know that a lot of the growth in housing development will happen in what we call areas of growth. So areas like Three Springs, areas just adjacent to city limits, like maybe La Posta Road or other commercial corridors. But we also want to clearly communicate the neighborhoods will still absorb more housing. That's still a necessity to address this issue. And we want to give the people who need housing the opportunity to live in these neighborhoods that are walkable and convenient. But we want to do it in a way that doesn't detract from the character of those neighborhoods. So that's the tension that we feel, and that's what we're trying to do in crafting a really well thought out program. Again, that's not before you tonight, but will be coming in the future. These are a lot of the same concerns that were raised during the ADU program, and I think we've shown that we can craft a program that enables more housing options but does not really negatively impact the neighborhoods where they're located. So that's my intro before we get into the actual hearings, just to try and level set, get us all on the same page, again, in the hopes that these hearings go smoothly, and we're all on the same page. So
I'm going to make a small comment or question, because this table you show, I've seen it being referred to before, and where does it come from? Because it's a little bit misleading. The top gray left says the households without children. So every young couple that buys a house in the early stages of starting a family is in that gray zone, and I would, consider them the right people to be in a single family home. So that proportion, if you say 28%, maybe it's way higher. Just a comment.
It's from the Southwest Colorado COGS
root
Housing
policy.
Needs Assessment.
The root policy.
Yeah. And yeah, and this is regional too. It's not specific to Durango, so it's rural areas, but it's just a quick illustration to show kind of the disproportionate supply to the demand. And we can dig into those numbers. We can provide more detail behind them when the time comes.
No, it was just, as soon as you show something, you have to know what you're looking at, and I think it's misleading, that's all.
Okay.
But we all know there's a housing issue, so.
So now you're directly
We'll get into the public.
11.1.2.
Correct.
Yep,
And Dan Armentano has
Addressing.
been working hard on these text amendments, so I'll turn it over to him. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the intro, Scott. Okay, so to dive into these, Dan Armentano with the Community Development Department. So these are proposed text amendments to chapters 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the Land Use Code. It's 10 different sections. As Scott mentioned, most of these amendments are pretty minor cleanup items. There are some more substantial housing related changes specifically to the ENMF, that's Established Neighborhood and Multifamily Zone. Also adding a new residential use called multi-unit property. And as Scott mentioned, all these amendments have been reviewed and recommended by the Code Alignment Group and the Planning Commission. So this is just a quick summary of the proposed amendments, and I'll go through these pretty quickly and then come back to them as needed. But first, adding the multi-unit property use and creating standards for it, allowing one additional dwelling per lot size category in ENMF, and removing a lot width requirement. I've got a table that I'll show you guys that illustrates that pretty well. Reducing the minimum lot size and street frontage requirement for new lots in the ENMF zone. Adding design standards for accessory structures with second-story living space. It's a little confusing, but essentially that's like a detached duplex unit to protect privacy for neighbors, similar to what's in place for ADUs. We have these two different uses, and we're just aligning those requirements for those. So those are the housing-related items, and then the cleanup items are aligning noise level standards for outdoor commercial patios with what already exists in the municipal code, so cleaning up a minor discrepancy there. Expanding flexibility for temporary special events by removing a very restrictive lot size requirement. Updating standards for temporary commercial sales to allow for permit renewals. Also provide a little bit more flexibility in site layout and emphasize the need for the management of fat soils and grease. And then finally, allowing new trees for landscaping purposes to be delivered on site in a container, as well as balled and burlapped. Right now, we only allow them to be delivered balled and burlapped. So again, minor cleanup items there. So I want to talk about the ENMF zone, just to give you guys an idea as to where these amendments are really going to apply. So the Land Use and Development Code describes the ENMF zone as an area where we want to protect and encourage investment in multifamily properties. As you can see in the map here on the right, so all the red is ENMF zone properties, and it's pretty well dispersed throughout our other established neighborhoods. Generally, this designation was given to existing multifamily properties, which is why it's kind of scattered around like that. Most of these properties are existing condo complexes, a lot of apartment complexes. That's probably 75% or more of the 466 total parcels with this zoning designation. So really, these amendments will probably impact less than 100 or so properties.
That map is extremely helpful. Could you share that with all of council? And it would have been very helpful. Maybe it eliminated some of the confusion if it was in the documents.
Thank you for the feedback. Yeah.
Because that clears up a lot.
Yeah, it does. And you know, like I said, it really is scattered throughout.
Dan, you're being requested to raise the mic up and actually stand in front of it.
Do that.
Thank you.
Dan, could you also clarify, it is helpful, thank you. Could you also clarify with the ADUs, would they only apply to those in red? And that, again, the same less than 100 properties, I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of how many properties would be eligible for an ADU.
It's not ADU.
So,
it's not ADU, you used the term back before, I'm sorry.
So you're talking about number 4 here?
Yeah, the second story, that's it, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so just to explain this one a little bit better, right now, there's kind of two ways that a property owner could build a second dwelling on their property, a second detached dwelling. If they qualify for what we call a duplex, so 2 units on a single lot, then they can just build a second detached structure behind their existing home. If they don't qualify, and that's based on lot size, then their option is typically to do an ADU. There's only a few zones where we allow a detached ADU, but the ADU standards are essentially more strict in terms of privacy for second floor units. A lot of ADUs are like a garage on the first floor and then living space on the second floor. And there are standards for windows and decks and things that face interior property lines that state the window has to be, this level above the floor grades to protect the privacy of the neighbor. That doesn't apply for duplexes right now. So this change essentially just aligns those two.
Okay,
and that's
thank you.
one of the comments that we get a lot from neighbors.
But again, just to confirm and make sure I understand this correctly, this is still just for EN multifamily.
That change would apply across the board. So that would be to like EN 1 and 2, which is the 2 zones where we allow duplexes.
So you are allowing duplexes, that you're proposing to allow duplexes?
They're already allowed. They're already allowed. So duplexes are already allowed in EN 1 and 2 on a lot that's 7,500 square feet or larger.
Okay.
They're allowed in ENMF as well, but we're not proposing to make any changes to that allowance specifically. We're only making a change to the design standards for those secondary detached units.
Okay.
Could you please go back to the map for just a moment? Thank you.
Sure.
I would also encourage you to post that on our website and include it in some way so that the public can see this.
I'll send you the link. There's a link. It's on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so these are the specific changes that are going to apply to the EN multifamily zone.
Can you blow it up by any chance? Do you have an iPad? What are you working on? I want to go like this.
I don't know if I know how to make that any bigger.
Or maybe I get binoculars.
Sorry.
Can you tell it to go to 120% so that maybe and then we can look at the top half and then the bottom half separately, maybe?
I can kind of see it vaguely.
Would you recommend the doctor's office? No.
Do you know where I find that?
No, it's normally at the top. Yeah, sorry.
My apologies. I can just kind of read it aloud for you.
Sure, okay.
As best I can. So the table at the top is the existing code. And this table defines the density for ENMF, the permitted density for ENMF based on lot area and lot width. So on the left is the lot area. The second column is the lot width. And based on those two factors, the number of dwelling units that can be approved there is on the right. So right now, a lot of up to 5,624 square feet and less than 50 feet wide can only have 1 dwelling unit. And that basically increases to 2, 3, 4, 5, and up to 8 for a lot of 15,000 square feet or more. So what we've done is we've looked at this and calculated in red here what the density actually is for those dwelling units based on the lot size. And we found that there's a lot of inconsistency. So at the 15,000 square foot lot size, 8 units equates to 23.2 units per acre, whereas at the 5,624 square foot lot size, 1 unit is only 7.74 units per acre. So what we are proposing to do is take that maximum density of 23.2 units per acre and just project it up the table. So what that does, in effect, is add 1 additional dwelling unit to each lot size that's already in the table with some really minor modifications to the lot sizes in the table. So we've gone from 10,000 square feet here to 9,375. But what it does is it makes the table a lot more consistent. And it allows more properties to try to achieve maximum density in this zone. It makes a duplex use a use by right in the multifamily zone as well, regardless of lot size. Now, it's important to say that any new construction in this zone still does need to meet underlying dimensional standards. So there are setbacks, height restrictions, et cetera, for this zone, and any new construction would still need to align with those standards, regardless of how many units they're proposing. The other change is to reduce the minimum lot width and size for new parcels. So for subdivisions, right now it's 10,000 square feet for a minimum lot size, which essentially prohibits any subdivision in the zone. So we're proposing to reduce that to 4,000 square feet and a 35-foot minimum width, which aligns with EN1 and EN2. So I know that's some technical information, so if you guys have questions, I can answer those now if you'd like, or,
Okay, so you're making it all consistent with EN1 and EN2, but the top changes are just for the multifamily.
all of these changes are just for the ENMF zone. So this is all for the multifamily zone.
Okay, thank you.
Come on, next slide. There we go. Okay, so the next thing that we're proposing to do is to add a new use called multi-unit property. Again, this only applies in ENMF and then our other multifamily zones, so medium density, high density zones. The definition of this proposed use is a parcel of land that is developed with 3 or more residential dwellings which are located in 2 or more buildings. So think about like a duplex in the front with a detached residential structure in the back. That's what we would envision for this type of use, as well as potentially 2 detached structures. This is kind of like, it's not a loophole, it's I guess the opposite of that. Our code right now basically requires any structure in these, or any multifamily use in these zones to have all units contained within one structure. So we weren't basically allowed to permit 2 duplexes on a property that would qualify for 4 units otherwise. So creating this use just kind of cleans that up. The standards for it are similar to our existing standards for multiplexes. The parking standards are the same as well for multiplexes and multi-unit buildings, and they're the same standards that I believe this council has seen with the recent code amendments to parking that came through a few months back. Let's see if it'll let me go to the next slide. Okay, here we go. So to talk about alignment with adopted plans, to start with, the strategic plan does specifically direct staff to align the land use and development code to try to promote housing by reviewing density standards. So that's exactly what we've done in the ENMF zone. The housing plan includes a recommended action item that states reassess design and density standards in high density neighborhoods. Again, the ENMF zone is a high density neighborhood and we are reassessing the standard. We found generally that the lot width requirements are too restrictive and that the minimum lot sizes and width more or less precludes subdivisions. And then finally, the comprehensive plan does anticipate code amendments, as you are all aware, and it also generally encourages greater density workforce housing, as well as a wide variety of housing types. So I need to use the mouse, whoops. Just to really quick touch on the LUDC review criteria for text amendments. Generally, they must support adopted plans and policies. We just talked about that. The proposed amendments must be consistent with essentially the rest of the LUDC. Most of the cleanup items are more or less realigning the code with itself. The proposed amendments must further the health, safety, or general welfare of the community and provide for community benefits. As we're all aware, we need additional housing and we're trying to find ways to encourage that to be built. So we find that those criteria are met because that's what we are trying to accomplish with these amendments. Come on, okay. So yes, as you're all aware, and as Scott touched on, we did receive a number of comments expressing opposition to the Multiplex Initiative that we've begun and in general additional density in the EN zones. These amendments do not allow for new multiplexes in EN zones or multi-unit properties or any additional density in ENs 1 through 6. We're only talking about ENMF here. The Planning Commission reviewed this at the end of August. They did ask for some clarification on a few items. Generally, those comments were pretty minor, and they're all discussed in the minutes. The neighbor privacy concerns for the 2-story accessory structures was discussed at a bit more length, And one of the commission did request a change requiring windows that are less than 5.5 feet off of the second floor to be opaqued in order to preserve privacy concerns for neighbors. Right now it's 3.5. That was staff's initial proposal, but I did change those red lines to 5.5 on the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Following that change, they did recommend adoption of these amendments on a 5-0 vote. So to conclude, most of the amendments are pretty minor, a lot of cleanup changes. They'll approve the flexibility and function of the code for the public. The ENMF updates will encourage the development of additional housing, more lots to achieve maximum density in an existing high density zone. That multi-unit property use will allow for additional flexibility for housing types, and the proposed amendments help to align the code with adopted plans and policies. So I have a motion on screen, which is the same as what you have in your packet, and I could take any additional questions.
All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Are there any public here to make a comment on this? No? Tom, is there anybody virtual?
There is not, Mayor.
All right, wonderful. Then I'll close the public hearing. And council, do you have any questions of staff? No? All righty, would someone like to make a motion?
Let me ask a couple of questions. I thought there would be more. If you look at the map in red, with the red MF zones highlighted, is there really that many properties that want to have one more unit on? I mean, first of all, I guess what I'm struggling with is what is the amount of opportunity or changes that really are going to take place? Is this, if I look at the amount of red, it's very limited. And then the biggest change that people worry about is the addition of the one number by acreage or by a surface area. So is that really going to make 2 or 3 units in all the red areas happen? How many of these properties are there?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think we will see some units added to these zones. I think we looked at this in the context of a few inquiries that staff got about ENMF zoned properties, and we're kind of confused by some of the standards that we had and felt that this was, sort of a simple cleanup to make, just to, again, project that allowed density right up the table. Is this going to result in 10, 15, 20 new housing units? Probably not, certainly not in the short term. But it is a reasonable cleanup change. I think it does help to align the code with some of council's goals. And we did receive some inquiries about it. So I think it will have some short-term impacts, but not a substantial amount that's gonna, really make a difference in the city's housing situation. But
actually, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate that. Second question, I have a little more here, but the second question is, what is the next step? Scott, or you maybe can explain on the multiplex that got the whole floodgates open on public comment, because I'm sure we had a lot of comments. So, what can you give a little bit of an explanation of what that is going to be? Because
yeah, sure. It's myself and a couple other planners that are involved in working on this, and it's been a pretty complicated process. I think the next step for us is to, first we're gonna have a second public meeting. We've had one so far. It was over Zoom. It wasn't especially well attended. We had a virtual city hall survey that kind of put some general questions out there trying to gauge support for the use. We did find that there was a lot of support. We got, I think, 318 documented responses on the survey, which was really good. And over 60% did support allowing new multiplexes in their neighborhood. But we've still got some work to do in terms of first just nailing down the code language. There's a lot of building code concerns that come into play. Any building that has more than 3 units needs to be sprinkled. We also feel that there's a lot of existing multiplexes already out in our neighborhoods that have been converted illegally. So we'd like to try to sit down with some of the owners of those properties and talk to them about the code requirements, how we could legalize those units and try to come up with a plan for that. That's going to be an important next step. And then again, just trying to get more feedback from the community as this moves forward. So,
yeah, so I'm a little bit unprepared, I guess, because of the changes. And then I see this map and I think, oh my gosh, it seems to be really not a big issue. If you talk about 5 properties or 10 properties that might have one more unit on their surface, then I think, yeah, why are we spending the time on this? But it also makes me cautious because we have so much community feedback that I feel maybe we should be a little bit more thorough in communicating. You mentioned the survey. The survey is a very small survey. It's a very select group. It does not represent our community. So let me go run through this here. If I go back to the ADUs, so first of all, a lot of it is cleanup, and that's easy. I think that is probably necessary, and it's a pity that that's going to be caught up, or that is caught up in this topic now, because it's, I get too many comments from our community. When the ADUs came at the time, it was also supposed to help affordable housing. Now, it didn't really seem to help, but I don't know. Is there any survey feedback from ADUs if they are long-term rentals, short-term rentals, if they're at market rate, or is there any circle back like ADUs was a successful program or not a successful program?
May I ask a question, Olivier? Is this a topic that you feel is related to multiplexes? Because if it is, maybe it's a perfect conversation for when we have the multiplex conversation.
I think I should like to ask these questions because I go, every time I get, veered off and interrupted. To me, this is, you're starting with a very beneficial land use development code update for some specific topics, easily cleaned up. And the multifamilies, I think we often don't circle back properly to our community. I get too many people say, what are we doing? I want to keep my neighborhood. And if I look at your map, I think, why didn't we do better in this? And then I think before I say, yeah, sure, because it's just a cleanup, I'm a little bit caught by surprise. Like, is it now only MF? And then is it only 5 properties? Why are we doing this for 5 properties?
Can I just answer a couple of your questions? Yeah. So this is showing ENMF. The Multiplex Initiative would legalize or provide a pathway to legalize both existing and new multiplexes in areas outside of this zone. So we haven't officially decided where they're going to go in yet, but it would be more than these zones. Right now, multiplexes are permitted in this zone already. So what we're talking about is potentially bringing forward code amendments that would allow them in more areas of town. So that's first. As far as ADUs, and I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but yeah, I think you're right in that we haven't had as many new ADUs built as we thought or maybe even hoped for, but I think we need to kind of look at our code requirements for ADUs too, and staff has talked about reviewing those code requirements and revisiting them and seeing if they are too restrictive, because they may be, and we've actually already opened up other parts of town to ADUs recently as well.
Or not restrictive enough. Because
potentially, yeah. I mean, we'll look at all facets of the code and try to make that determination, and certainly take the public's comment as well, while also considering council directives to try to encourage more housing. So,
yeah.
So can I, real quick? Yeah. So I think it's great you're cleaning up the code to better align. I think it's great that we're working on something that could potentially have some density in these key areas that are highlighted. When people send me emails about this with concerns, I responded back. It's only in ENMF. We're not talking about any neighborhoods right now. That's in the future. And so I feel like for time's sake, and this is where I run into some issues, is that right now we're voting and we're talking about this specific thing right in front of us. So this specific thing with 466 total parcels, with 100 properties that may be impacted by these amendments, we're cleaning up the code. I feel comfortable making a motion to go forward, and unless,
I'm happy to make it. I have it in front of me.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
You want to do
perfect.
it?
I'll move to approve the proposed text amendments to chapters 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the LUDC as described in the staff report and discussed at the public hearing, with the finding that the proposal complies with the criteria for text amendments as described in the Land Use and Development Code.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to remind us all that this was very clear in the September 7th meeting that it was just multifamily. So I feel like that you did provide the clear information that I needed as a council person. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that there's a lot of discussions about making these changes to land use and development codes municipality-wide throughout the state. And because everyone's recognizing that housing is an issue, and they're trying to, they say that this is a good first step, is to attack it from policy level. So I appreciate your efforts and the alignment process. Thank you.
And I think there is a way to do it smart and keep our spirit and character of Durango, and I think you guys are doing a great job. And as long as we kind of all stay on that same page, I think it'll be a good thing.
All right.
And I'll finish that topic. I'm going to abstain on that vote. I don't feel I've been able to ask all the questions. I'm very concerned about the concerns from our community, and that we are not looking at our community for proper feedback through a survey or however, but a proper survey, not a 300-400 people response. And it's a pity, because I actually think, when I look at it technically, I think it's a good change. Yeah, a lot of these changes make perfect sense, but I just don't feel like I can vote yes or no against it.
Do you have any discussion on this?
No, other than you were very clear, as I said. Thank you.
All right. May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Phillips?
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosman?
Abstain.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. And now we'll move on to 11.2, quasi-judicial hearings. So 11.2.1 is a public hearing to consider the Hillcrest Golf Course fast track easement. Oh, Dan, great.
Yes, me again. Excuse me. Thank you. I'll go through this one really quick. This is a request from Fast Track for an easement across city property up at the Hillcrest Golf Course to put in some new fiber. Okay, here we go. So here's a context map showing the golf course, which is of course city owned. There's actually 2 locations where the fiber will be on city property. It's kind of down here in the southwest corner and then up by the clubhouse. And here's the easement descriptions. They're just 20-foot wide easements for that new fiber, pretty small in size. It's just new fiber to serve the Hillcrest Golf Clubhouse itself. And as you guys are aware, an easement requires a public hearing and an ordinance. And I have a recommended motion for you.
Are there any questions for staff? Do I hear a motion?
Wait, you need a hearing.
A hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I opened the public hearing. Is there anyone here to comment on the fast track communications easement? Tom, is there anybody virtual?
I do not see anybody, Mayor. Just doing a double check here. Nope, no one from online.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. And now are there any questions for staff? Nope. And do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve the fast track communications easement across city-owned property at Hillcrest Golf Course as depicted in the attached documentation, and direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance authorizing the granting of this easement for a first reading at a regularly scheduled city council meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Jose, may we have a roll call, please?
It's my first time to do it. I feel like the pressure of everything else. One's on like, okay, don't mess this up. Let's see, Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Yes.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Buell.
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans.
Yes.
and Mayor Baxter.
Yes, thank you. And then we're now on to 11.2.2, a public hearing to consider a preliminary minor subdivision for Twin Buttes, Phase 1, Filing 1B, Parcel H. Hello, Mark.
Thank you. Screen sharing, great. Okay, thank you, Mark Williams, Community Development Department. And we're waiting for that to get to slideshow. There we go. So as you said, this is a preliminary minor subdivision for Parcel H in Twin Buttes. The proposal would create 4 single-family lots. This is a map to show you where it is. This is Highway 160 West. Tipple Avenue is the main entrance to Twin Buttes, and then Parcel H is back a little bit. It's 2.07 acres, and this proposal would create 4 lots ranging from 12,500 to 31,000 square feet. Originally, Twin Buttes had planned to add more units there. It's one of these so-called bulk parcels. They were created at the time of platting, and then the idea is that as time goes by, they'll reassess what these parcels can be used for. Because of topography, they determined that it would be best single-family housing. Here's a copy of the plat. Lots 95 and 96 would have a shared driveway. You can see the building envelopes here. Most of the topography is in the back. Lot 94 is the biggest lot. That's because it's also got a lot of topography, so the driveway would come up here where it's steeper, and then the house would be located back here. And then lot 93 would be up here. So this does create housing, and in generating this market rate housing, in turn helps Twin Buttes be able to finance the affordable housing that will be up there. Oops. The plan is in conformance with LUDC section 6363, which governs these subdivisions. There was no public comment for this proposal. And you can see the motion that's on the screen. And that is my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, Dan Burkhart, against representative, is on the phone if you have any questions for him or if he wants to make a presentation.
Okay, so I'll open the public hearing, and does Dan want to make a presentation? I have a question.
Good evening, councilors. Dan Burkhart, Burkhart Planning and Permitting. Sorry, I'm scrambling. I thought the meeting was tomorrow night, so I do not have a presentation, but I will say thank you to Mark, and we do agree with the conditions in the staff report, making one note that condition number A2 should only refer to 1 shared driveway, not 2.
Right, originally they may have been planning for 2 shared driveways. There's only 1 shared driveway, and so Dan's correct.
Any other comments, Dan?
No, that covers it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Tom, are there any people virtually wanting to speak on this topic?
I'm checking and I do not see anyone.
Okay, wonderful. Then I'll close the public hearing. Council, any questions for staff?
I do have a question. Coming off of the discussions around fire mitigation and that importance, I was just wondering, Dan, this may be for you or Mark for you, is there any discussion with the developer, especially given the steepness of this topography, about mitigation? Not that you have any requirements with that, but is there at least a discussion about the importance of that?
When Twin Buttes was originally planned and approved about a decade ago now, they had to submit a fire mitigation plan, which applies to the whole development. And so they have done some, excuse me, some tree removal. I couldn't speak to what they did specifically for any of these individual lots.
Yeah, they did significant mitigation throughout. Yeah, they actually even had to close trails and things like that to do that. So.
If I may, additionally, they actually used some of the lumber that they cleared, that they used during clearing. They actually had a lumber mill there on site and used a lot of that lumber where they could for construction purposes.
That's really good to hear. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from council?
Maybe a small question. Thank you for the presentation. What is it meant with the comment that you had earlier, like 4 pages back? Market rate housing sales and Twin Buttes provides funds for the project's affordable housing obligation. Is that just the fee in lieu, or what do you mean?
So these are market rate housing units, and that's the way Twin Buttes generates its revenue. So when we negotiate an affordable housing agreement, that's how the affordable housing that gets built there will be funded, is from generating the revenue from the sales from the market rate housing units. So while these aren't affordable units themselves, they do benefit the affordable housing program out there.
Okay. No, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Twin Buttes Phase 1 filing 1D Parcel H preliminary minor subdivision, direct the applicant to prepare the final plat and milers, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat milers once all necessary revisions are made.
I can second that.
Discussion? No? May we have a roll call, please, Ms. Phillips?
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Bosman's?
Yes.
Counselor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. And I must say that Mr. Madrigal did a fine job of doing the vote.
Under pressure, I was able to come in.
Okay, on to 11.2.3, a public hearing to consider a preliminary plan review for the Florida Road Mixed Housing Project. Mark, you're presenting again?
Oh, sorry, I was putting up the wrong one. Here we go. I need to share this. Where? There we go. Okay, thank you, Mayor Baxter, Mark Williams again. So this is a preliminary development plan review for the Cummins property, which is, the project itself is the Florida Road Mixed Housing Project. The project would result in 38 units, 12 single-family homes, 12 patio homes, and 14 townhouses. There's also on-site open space and play areas with several pedestrian connections would be included in the development. You've probably seen this map before. This is the location at the southwest corner of Colorado Avenue and Florida Road. So just a real quick note about the process. This is a plan development, which is 3 stages. We've already completed the conceptual plan review. That's where the big questions such as access and density get answered, and is the project viable? This is the preliminary stage where we look at more of the detailed engineering and planning of the project. And then the final stage, the final plan review, is generally staff level. And that's where we wrap up details and get the agreements signed. This is the site plan that they've proposed, and I'll explain in a second why it says option 1. But here are the single family homes are laid out on the north and west sides. So this is the Folsom Place neighborhood on the west side, and Ryler Park to the north. Those are single family homes. So it's a little bit more compatible to have these homes against the existing single family homes. These are duplex patio homes bordering the lot to the south of here. And then Florida Road is right here, and these are the townhomes, which are the tallest and highest density of the units in the project. So some of the site features include the open space areas for different functions, picnic area, a playground, some more open space areas. This is a green court. If you've seen Jameson Court, which is just across Colorado from here, you'd be familiar with this design. It's a semi-public, semi-private space for the residents here. The detention and water treatment is in the northwest corner because that's the way the water flows. So it gets treated and released into the city's storm sewer pipes. This is not a through street. That was a compromise that we worked out with the Ryler Park neighborhood in order to try to assuage some of their fears. So the intent is that this will never be a through street, even if the lots to the south developed. There will be pedestrian access, and maybe at some point in the future, if the lots to the south develop, people will be able to walk through there, but there will be a gated emergency access at some point. The through road has some traffic calming features. This is called a traffic chicane that slows traffic. These are called neck downs. All this is designed to keep traffic flow safe and slow for the neighborhood. And then probably the biggest discussion we had at the Planning Commission meeting was the driveways in front of the townhomes. Our code, the LUDC, requires that there be a 20-foot separation between driveways, and obviously there's not 20 feet of separation between these driveways. But if you adhere to the letter of the law, this is what you get, which is essentially a giant parking lot, which aesthetically is not great, and it also adds to the impervious surface, which would require more or larger detention basins to treat that water. And so for those reasons, Planning Commission recommended that to the the City Council that because of the slow traffic that's anticipated to be on here, where this is one of the neck downs is right here, that this would be a safe situation and that this is the way that it should be designed and not the other option. So a couple of other features. This is a pedestrian connection that goes directly from the neighborhood to the multi-use trail along Florida. And the intersection here hasn't changed. There'll be a dedicated left turn lane from Colorado onto Florida, and then the other lane will turn right on to Florida. And so there'll be more traffic generated here, but it should speed up traffic flow a little bit, because if one car is turning left onto Florida currently, then everyone backs up. There'll also be a small turn pocket here for cars turning left from Colorado into the neighborhood. And as we noted in the past, some on-street parking in this area would be removed. And then the last thing is that the sidewalk, which currently doesn't exist, will be completed from the new road out to Florida Road. So the pedestrian network in here will be complete. Something that I didn't talk about was building height will be measured from the natural grade. There was a large amount of fill that was dumped on the site. The applicants hired Troutner Geotech, a local geotech firm, to find the native grade. That's where the buildings will be measured from. So for example, if there's 7 feet of fill on one site, let's say, I'll just throw out an example. I'm not saying that this house has 7 feet of fill, but we would measure the height from 7 feet below the current surface. The height limit for a single family home there is 29 feet. So the height limit would be 22 feet, or they could excavate down to the native grade if they wanted to make the house actually 29 feet. These are some sample elevations. This doesn't mean this is what they're going to build, but it'll generally be in this vein. It's Colorado contemporary mountain town, so combination of gable roofs and shed roofs with typical materials that you would find in new developments around the city, including wood paneling or cementitious hardy board paneling, maybe some metal paneling as well. And then this is a sample elevation of what the townhouses would look like. I think something new that's happened since we finished the staff report is related to fair share. According to the formula that Homes Fund updates annually, based on the number of units that are in here and the average bedroom size, they would owe a little over $514,000 for the fair share program. And we initially asked them to provide a pro forma to show how much it would cost if they built affordable units in accordance with the Homes Fund schedule. And so that ended up being around $1.8 million, which equals around $47,000 per unit. Since then, this past week, staff and Homes Fund and the developer have been trying to investigate ways where we could get more we could get built affordable units without them having to pay $1.8 million, which is not feasible. Which is why they chose the fee in lieu. And so what we've would like your blessing for is they will still pay the fee in lieu to the city. So they'll still pay us the $514,000. But then the city and the developer and Homes Fund will work together to put that money towards the purchase of 5 of those townhomes and buy down each of the purchasing price for $100,000. And then we would deed restrict those units. So we'd get 5 deed restricted units. Homes Fund is enthusiastic about this. The applicant is in favor of it. The city realizes this is something that we haven't done this before, which is why we want to go back and negotiate the details, and then we would come back to you once we have a fair share agreement for sign off from City Council. So that would be the appropriate time mentioned at the bottom. This just mentions the different LUDC criteria that the plan is in conformance with. And then the portions of the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan that relate to generation of affordable housing, which this project. At the Planning Commission meeting, we received comment from one resident, George Curtis, who lives in Folsom Place. I included his comments in your packet, and his comments are also in the Planning Commission minutes. And there is the recommended motion for City Council.
Thank you, Mark. I'll open the public hearing. The applicant have a presentation or anything they'd like to say? Do you know, Tom, is there anyone in virtual that might be an applicant?
Tracy Reynolds has just raised his hand.
I'm sorry, who?
Tracy Reynolds. Tracy, I've unmuted you. You should be able to speak now.
Okay. Yeah, we do not have a presentation, but are happy to answer any questions. And I believe that Dennis Shaw, the developer, is on the call. So.
Okay, thank you. Tom, are there any public comment people virtually?
There are not.
And are there any here in the room? No? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. And council, do you have questions for the applicant or for staff?
Thanks for the presentation. I want to say that I love the creativity and the in lieu fee in lieu, whatever it's called. I think that's awesome to try to figure out
team effort,
actual like houses that could be, or, you know, fit in there. So that's great. I like the multi-generational mix of houses there. So looks good.
I also want to thank you for your exploring the deed restricted. I think you need many tools in your toolbox, and this is one that hasn't been used excessively, and I'm intrigued to have your final report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a couple. I'm actually very familiar with this project, and I listened to the various council meetings as well as the planning meetings. When did this project start? Do you remember by any chance?
It was June. I think it went to Planning Commission June 2020.
I thought it was way older than this. Well, maybe I'm mistaken, but I listened to some of these meetings, and I tell you, first of all, I feel for the property owners, for the developers that are involved, and for the neighboring residents in expressing their concerns. I saw you have only one comment, but there were many more, yeah, over the process of this this project. I believe there's 2 contractors that left on this project, or 2 developers.
Right. The original developers from Boulder pulled out of the project, and now Dennis Shaw. Dennis Shaw is going to be the developer, and Tracy's the project designer.
Do you know why they left, or is it?
I think it was personal reasons for both. One was a health reason. I'm not sure about the other.
Yeah. I've seen the meetings, and I don't think this is the best example to look at. I'm very glad, though, that we're moving forward with it. And one of the questions I had is about how we can even consider helping them make sure it gets built, and hopefully sooner, and hopefully with some affordable housing. So you addressed that, and I appreciate that as well. But yeah, let's move this forward.
Thank you.
Any other counselor comments?
So just thank you again for your creative. We're really working to get some diverse housing options going, and it'd be nice to have some deed restrictions within a unit of itself. I like the layout as well of the design. After seeing several different approaches, I like where they're going.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the traffic calming devices and the pedestrian access are wonderful. My comment on the deed restrictions is Lisa from Homes Fund has often stated that deed restrictions don't work because people won't buy homes if they know what they can't appreciate. So I'm hoping that we're not looking at just a normal standard deed restriction and that we're getting very creative about how this works, whether the restrictions are just for a number of years or they're for workers in the neighborhood. So I'm hoping that when you are creative about this, you're looking at it from what are other communities doing that works and how can we avoid what doesn't work? Because there have been a lot of, Aspen is a particular area where deed restrictions were written with intended consequences, and the owners of those units have turned it around and gone around those intentions and are actually not following what Aspen had originally intended. So I just want to make sure we're very thoughtful when we do these, because I think it's a great opportunity to put workforce housing in this area, either in perpetuity or at least until we can build enough units where market rate is workforce housing. So
okay, yeah, point well taken. We'll make sure we are thorough.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll move to approve the Florida Road Mixed Housing Preliminary Plan with findings and conditions contained in the staff report and adopted by the Planning Commission, and direct staff to conduct the final plan review.
I can second.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? No? All right. May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Reel?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. On to 11.2.4, a public hearing to consider the grounds rezone. Dan.
I'm back. One more. Thank you, Mayor. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. It was hiding on me. Thank you, Dan Armentano with the Community Development Department. This is the grounds rezone at 146 East 4th Avenue. Start with an overview. So Morgan and Joshua Grounds have requested to rezone their property 146 East 4th from established neighborhood 1 to established neighborhood multifamily, ENMF. The property is currently used as a legal duplex, but with a rezone and the amendments to the ENMF zoning districts, the applicant is proposing to build a second detached duplex structure behind the existing home. So this will qualify as a multi-unit property with that change and would require a special use permit. Here's a context map showing the property outlined in yellow there, if you can see it. This is down in the southern portion of the old Durango neighborhood, just south of East 2nd Street. And if we zoom in and show a closer aerial of the property, you can see that the structure here is the duplex, and I believe it's 3-bedroom dwelling on one side and then a studio on the left there. And important to note that this area is surrounded by some larger multifamily development, both to the north. This is an 8-unit existing multifamily property. And across the alley is, I'm not sure how many units exactly, but it is more than 10. And those properties are both zoned ENMF. And then immediately to the south are 3 single-family homes that are zoned EN1.
Dan, across the street from there?
Yes, can you see it?
Go back.
Previous map, yeah.
Yep.
Across the street from there, is that a church or what is that?
This is a utility use. It's like a power station, I think LPAs.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
So this is the zoning map, which illustrates the ENMF zoning interspersed with the EN1 zoning. So again, you can see the subject property highlighted in yellow there with the ENMF zone immediately to the north and across the alley. And I'll just point out too, to go back to this whole area south of East 2nd has a lot of multifamily development, a lot of smaller ENMF parcels, as well as some larger scale development, multifamily development as well. This area south of East 2nd is designated as an area of change, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail later on. And that's a designation from the comprehensive plan and the housing plan. This is the future land use map from the comprehensive plan. Just wanted to note that this whole area has a future land use designation of medium density. This specific proposal would be more on the high density side of it. Staff tends to look at this future land use designation on a broader scale than just the single parcel. So while the parcel may be higher density use, more broadly, this whole area will remain medium density even with the addition of 2 units on this one property. So just wanted to point that out. Just to go in a little bit more detail about the property itself and the proposal. So the owners purchased this duplex back in 2013. At the time, it wasn't recognized by the city as a legal duplex, so they went through a pre-existing duplex legalization process when the city was registering all the second units in the city as part of the ADU registration process. Sorry, let me do the slideshow here. Sorry for forgetting that. The property itself, the lot is 9,375 square feet, which would qualify it for the 4 units that are proposed under the new code amendments that we just talked about. The new duplex structure that they're proposing would need to be designed to meet accessory structure standards and be subordinate in scale to the existing principal structure. So we're not talking about a larger building than what already exists. And the applicant would need to provide 5 total parking spaces. There is an existing curb cut along East 4th, which would need to be closed. They need to have new water and sewer for the new duplex and potential public improvements of street trees and sidewalk changes as deemed necessary by engineering. All that would be reviewed at the special use permit phase and not as part of this rezone request. So another thing to note about the rezone request is it doesn't require a detailed site plan, as you can see by this sketch. So this kind of just shows the proposed structure here outlined in black behind the existing home. So this would be units C and D. They're proposing a 1,200 square foot structure, 2 600 square foot 1-bedroom units. Staff has looked at the alley and deemed that they could easily park it off of the alley, park those 5 parking spaces. And then just to go in a little bit more detail on what they're thinking of building. So this is the floor plan. Again, just 2 side-by-side, 600 square foot, small 1-bedroom kind of efficiency apartments in this structure, single story and subordinate in size to the existing principal structure. So to go into this proposal's alignment with LUDC codes as well as adopted plans. The LUDC for a rezone requires that the new zone be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. It requires a community benefit and requires adequate public facilities. Staff finds that all of those are met in this case. The benefit is the additional housing units. There's already existing water, sewer, streets in the area. And I'll talk about the comp plan in a second here. The strategic plan just very generally does promote the construction of new housing. The comprehensive plan, as I mentioned, classifies this area as this neighborhood as an area of change. So that's the red areas in this map. Mostly the areas of change are shown as kind of the mixed use corridors. And the housing plan does identify those areas as having the potential to absorb more housing. There's already existing infrastructure there. It's an efficient place to build more units. This part of town south of East 2nd, and I know it's really small on the screen, so I apologize for that, but it is designated as an area of change as well. With the housing plan's action item of 3.1 to evaluate ways to increase housing in the areas of change, staff felt that this was an appropriate infill project. Public comment. So we did receive a fair amount of public comment on this request. You guys have seen that. It's been included in your packet. Nearly all the comments are in opposition to this rezone request. So there's a lot of general common themes on those comments, including potential impacts on parking, traffic, infrastructure capacity to handle these new units, the additional density, noise, change in neighborhood character, and also just some general opposition to more rental housing units as opposed to owner occupancy in this neighborhood. There were also some concerns expressed about vacation rental uses, and I just want to point out that vacation rentals are allowed under the current zoning, EN1, and are not allowed under the proposed zoning of ENMF. The Planning Commission's discussion of this was somewhat lengthy. There was a lot of discussion on that area of change designation and some disagreement. There was some suggestion that the change referred to improving the existing single-family homes, so rehabilitation of those homes, and possibly a redevelopment of the multifamily uses in that area, as opposed to just broader scale rezones. And the counterpoint to that was sort of, does this designation area of change only apply to the properties that are already zoned ENMF? So do we only want to see those properties redevelop? So there was a request for some additional clarity on that concept. I did include a page from the housing plan that addresses this concept in a little bit more detail. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that as needed. There were other concerns about just a piecemeal approach of rezoning this area as opposed to a more broad, looking at it more broadly. And there was a general recognition of the neighbor concerns, but also on the flip side of that, a recognition that I think 2 units, the addition of 2 units is likely to have a pretty minimal impact on an area that already has some significant rental housing. In the end, there was a bit of a split vote, but there was a 3-2 decision in favor of recommending approval. So to summarize staff's findings and conclusions, this is a pretty small scale infill proposal. There are fairly minimal impacts anticipated to adding these 2 additional units. The subject property is adjacent to much larger multifamily developments with a lot more units than what is proposed on this property. And then just finally, we talked about the Multiplex Initiative earlier. One of the driving forces behind that is the fact that there have been so many single family homes and other residential properties in our EN zones carved up into more units illegally. And as part of the Multiplex Initiative, we're potentially looking at trying to legalize those units. In this case, the owner is going through the proper channels to try and get this rezone approved so that he may do this correctly. And I think it's just important to highlight that. So staff is recommending approval, and I do have a motion on screen and can take any questions for you at this time.
Thank you, Dan. I'll open the public hearing. Does the applicant have any presentation or any comments?
The applicant is here, and I'll defer to him as to whether or not he wants to say anything. Okay.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm Joshua Grounds. I'm the applicant, my wife and I. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. I've lived here for 26 years. Lived on the south side for a large portion of that. I'm very familiar with the area. My wife and I are both residential appraisers. We're very aware of the housing insufficiencies. We feel like this is affordable by nature of its size. It's inherently affordable housing. They're 600 square foot single bedroom units. Our current renter that lives in our studio, which is a single bedroom unit, is a professional at Mercy Medical Center. He or she has rented there for almost 7 years because they find it affordable and a nice place to live. I think we're good landlords and all that stuff.
Thank you. So council, do you have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any virtual public comments, Tom?
There are not, Mayor.
Alrighty. So I'll close the public hearing portion. Council, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Mayor, we do have, I believe, one gentleman. Oh. He's interested in speaking? No, I'm not. Okay. Okay, thank you.
I actually have a question that could apply to the applicant or also to staff, if you may. First of all, thank you for your making the existing rental available and to someone for such a long term. I'm sure they appreciate it, as do we in the city. I'm just wondering, some of the concerns that we hear from people is that we'll get rentals that are 1 month and it'll be targeted toward tourists coming in, and so it really doesn't affect it. Are there things that we as a city could be considering that could help incentivize you or any developer to keep that on a 6-month, year basis to really focus on people living here?
Oh, goodness. I grew up in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, so I'm well aware of the down valley trickle from Aspen. I also went to high school in Telluride. I saw both communities face the exact same issue that you guys are facing right now and trying to decide on all of this stuff. I realize it's extremely difficult, but I also realize that it's important. It's very difficult to live in a place where people can't afford to live and work. As an appraiser, Durango is becoming a very difficult place to live and work. And I find that to be very unfortunate. I think providing 2 small units would provide at least something. I don't know if you noticed in the picture that Dan showed earlier, but there's a camper in the backyard that's used by one of our local anesthesiologists when they're on call because they live out of town. So they sleep in my backyard. I think that speaks to part of the problem. So we just like to help, that's all. I mean,
Thank you.
We're also asking to put a rental property, to increase our income, but in the same light, we feel like it's important for the community.
Any other questions for council?
I was just curious because you have the whole plans defined. First of all, thank you for coming here and explaining yourself, presenting this. You already have the plans lined up for 2 additional units, but the code wasn't even changed under that category that you're applying for the change. Was that not a bit too quick, or were you just so confident that it would pass?
Oh, no, we, as appraisers, we call to find out the zoning on every appraisal that we do within the city limits of Durango. And actually, I believe my wife asked one day while she was researching a property if it would be possible for us to build a duplex on our existing property. And that's how this whole thing got started. And then we ended up hooking up with Dan. He explained the current changes that he's researching and that city staff is researching. And I think we just kind of fell in together, and here we are. So it was never my intention. I'd rather be reading to my children right now, but it was never my intention to be in front of you all. That I never thought that this would even take place, so.
But how did you come up with going in the duplexes, two duplexes, or 4 units in total on the property that, if you look at the current code an hour ago, or still is actually,
sure,
you can only build 3 units. And maybe you can explain that, or 2.
Yeah,
Not the EN1. I mean, if it was changed to multifamily, you could do 3, I think, I looked at the surface.
So the lot width requirement would have limited it to 2.
Okay.
Yep. So it just was kind of a coincidence that we'd had a discussion about this. I think I'd actually gotten an inquiry from a different property owner in ENMF and kind of looked at those standards. Staff had looked at that area south of East 2nd Street as well, and that area of change, and thought about potential rezoning opportunities. And that with the ENMF analysis that we had done, just kind of the stars sort of aligned with the grounds is coming forward and asking that question about the specific property. And I looked at it and said, hey, this is kind of a case study of exactly what we've kind of been talking about with the ENMF changes and allowing increased density there, as well as looking at that area of change and what's already down there. So, it was, I guess, a stars aligning scenario. So.
Now for the rezoning, I think it's always unfortunate that, first of all, this property is located in a very, high use, high density area. So it's, if ever you would change the zoning, this would probably be the first one you would approve. But I also think that it's very easy for council to say, well, it's for the common good, but the person that lives next door, he's going to be impacted, at least feels he's impacted. And I think we should never forget, the 6 people are probably the people right around it. And those are the single family homes. So I always find that a bit unfortunate, and I'm not sure how to address it, but a bigger scale approach would be one of them.
So do we have any other questions for
Yeah,
staff?
I was going to say, I kind of agree with Councilor Bosmans in terms of when I drove over there a few times. And like, if it makes sense, if you're going to increase density somewhere, like that's definitely a good spot to start, just because there are so many multifamily houses already over there. But trying to hold on to some of the single family and, making sure that it keeps its character is challenging. And so if we, change this one and then the one in the block over wants it, well, there's none in the block over, so one is fine. And, it just starts a trickling effect. And so I like to be really cognizant of that. And like, I'm not saying no. And then on that note too, when I was driving around, there was one particular time, I don't remember what time it was, but it was packed with cars. Like there's so many cars over there. And I don't know, I know there was a lot of emails about the alleyway and how it gets really muddy and people don't want to park back there. And, you're increasing people staying there. And so you can't force people to do things. I get that, but, more encouragement.
I'm sorry, can you speak so that people in the audience can hear you? Thank you.
I think a lot of our parking now is for people that work at Rivergate.
Yeah, that makes
Because
sense.
the river trail just actually starts right
there, yeah.
200 feet probably from our house. Which is why the anesthesiologist sleeps there, because they now do rounds at Rivergate when they didn't used to. But yeah, it's that end of town, that's where people used to come to camp in town, literally.
We need more rentals, we need more homes to buy, we need all these things. And so I'm not saying it's difficult sometimes to make sure we are taking into account neighbors and preserving our, the way Durango is and why I moved here 20 years ago. And also, making sure we have places for people to live that work here. So it's a balance.
Yep,
Any other
I agree.
comments? Do you have a comment? No? So I just wanted to address a couple of concerns by residents, but also a question that Councilor Bosman's asked too. I can't remember if I sent the email out today or not. I've been so busy, but do we know if that alley is on the repave list for the streets?
I do not know. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so maybe we could just at some
Follow up on
point
that.
find out about that, given that there's a large volume there. And I noticed in the photos, one of the reasons why I asked about across the street is the houses there that they talk about parking, and I do think there's probably an influx from somewhere else. But additionally, most of us don't have parking on both sides of the street in front of us. And that area does, it has essentially 2 lengths of street to park on. So, most of us aren't that fortunate. And I also appreciated that you put the additional units on the multifamily side of the lot rather than on the single family home side of the lot. I thought that was very sensitive and aware of that situation.
We're friends with our neighbors.
Oh, okay. So I appreciated that. And then to the short-term rental idea, a lot of communities are now looking at medium-term rentals as being restricted also. So anything under 3 months or maybe even 6 months. And just as something to like put a pin in it for staff, maybe that's an area that we might want to talk about so we can alleviate some of the concerns about short-term rentals, which, as you mentioned, can even be just a month now, and that gets it away from the short-term rental concept. So anyway, those were my comments. Any others? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the grounds rezone, It's downloading in front of me.
It's
Okay.
on the screen if
With
you'd
the
like.
findings and conditions as outlined in the staff report and discussed at this public hearing, and direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance adopting the rezone for a first reading at a regularly scheduled city council meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please, Ms. Phillips?
Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Buell,
Yes.
Councilor Bosman,
Yes.
Mayor Baxter.
Yes, thank you. Now there's no items from the city attorney, so we'll move on to, and no introduction of ordinances, so we'll move on to administrative. Mr. Madrigal, is there a city update?
There's not one this evening.
There's not one?
There is not one, no ma'am.
Oh, wow, okay. Don't know what to do.
Moving on.
So then we'll move on to item 15, council reports and actions, and please make your reports on what you think the community needs to know about and what actions you've taken with your, and also your liaison positions. Who would like to go first?
I can start.
Okay.
I'll be quick. I had the Durango La Plata County Airport Commission meeting on September 16th. We discussed an overview of the audited 2020 financial statements. We had an update on the runway rehab project, which is at 60% design, on track for 100% design in December and out to bid in January. We had an information update on the terminal expansion design. The federal face mask ordinance is in through at least January 18th. We finished August at 118% of 2019 levels, which completed the busiest summer of all time at DRO. We're just down 4% from 2019 levels year to date, so that's amazing. Outpacing nationwide recovery by approximately 50%. Frontier Airlines, their service has been extended through at least November 1st to Denver, and so that's exciting. Yeah, that's it. That's all the important things.
All right, anybody else?
Not me.
Anyone over here?
I have a couple. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting on September 8th. I'll try and be quick too. There was quite a bit of discussion on the 5% added for the engineering. That was not too well received, I guess. They discussed the capital improvement projects and priorities, 5-year plan. They requested data on actual financial numbers and prior year capital improvement projects that are still ongoing, fund balances. And they were planning a study session to be better prepared and then to make the recommendations. The staff explained about the tree, so that was a bit of a tough one. So there was no motion to save the tree, and as such, at the time, the project was planning to go forward as planned. The community gardens, the OK Gardens, as I had mentioned, they couldn't make a decision. And so it's pushed out again, and for more information gathering, etc. And to be honest, I have a feeling there won't be a decision on that next meeting either. And then there were project updates, the whole list. I'll save you that list. There was a comment again about the, actually the election of the board was passed again, but there was a comment on the extra board position. And there were some emails going back and forth, so I'll just address this on a public format. So we had appointed members to the board, so that board was filled. Then prior members said we thought we were considered or being on board, and then we made the decision to make that additional position temporarily available. So when I read those emails, I thought that basically means that the old board members are the additional members, not the ones that we appointed in the first place. But that might be a fine line of how you define it. You understand where I'm going with that? And so we need to clarify that because some of these positions come up in January. I think it's January.
I don't think you mean old board members, but those who might have served the longest, because we don't participate in age discrimination.
That's right. The existing board members that were supposed to have their position vacated, correct. So I think we need to clarify that, I guess, or at least if we agree on that, the definition, the way I read it.
Yeah, I think the emails that you're discussing were saying that we should do exactly that. And so we're still in the process of doing that. So, and also one of the documents that Kathy Metz gave us when we started this discussion had to do with how they have done attrition in the past. And I just didn't have time today to pull that up. So I think that those emails were today. And so I don't think we're going to have a resolution for a little bit till we discuss it and think about it. So
yeah, I was just trying to at least define who is the actual board member and who is the one that is added.
Right. And we'll be discussing that in the future. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
Then we had the Multimodal Advisory Board. I'll give you a summary on that too. That was a meeting of September 15th. There was a presentation on the 251 project, which was brought back to the Multimodal Advisory Board. There were quite questions and answers going back and forth in a lot of detail, so I'll spare you that too. The bottom line is that they have more questions and that the staff was going to find out some of the answers for better evaluation. That's all I had written on that one. There was the COG meeting, which was on September 16th, Southwest Colorado Council of Governments. And they presented the regional housing needs assessment. It was very interesting. And I think you all had that document. If not, if you shoot me an email, I will send it to you if you didn't have it. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
No.
All right, usually I don't have much to say, but this time I somehow had all these meetings. So the La Plata Economic Alliance board meeting and investor meetings were postponed till next month so that the Economic Alliance could have their summit tomorrow. And unfortunately, 4 of us counselors, well, fortunately or unfortunately, will be heading towards CML in Westminster. And so our city manager, Jose Madrigal, is going to attend, which is wonderful. Thank you very much. And Councilor Bosmans is going to do Council Connection tomorrow morning. Are you prepared for that, to be on screen again?
It's actually on Wednesday. But
oh, okay. So excellent. Wednesday, sorry.
Day to prepare.
So the coordinating committee meeting, which is FLC, 9R, and several other major groups that often meet once a quarter. Do we meet once or every 2 months? Every 2 months.
To do it monthly.
Yeah. And this time, Fort Lewis College, President Stridicus mentioned that their enrollment is up 2%, which is the largest. First year enrollment is up 2%, largest since 1998. Nice. So they had 2% more freshmen this year than they've had in years. And they are also starting their housing plan up there on their college property. And 9R is discussing where does the big picture go? So where does big picture school or the things that occurred in that building go? They are working on addressing COVID learning gaps. They have 70 open positions in 9R school district, and they have a huge challenge filling them. They get great candidates, and they offer them a job, and they go, oh, wonderful, we'll be there, and then they look for housing, and they back out. So that's a challenge. And the problem is they back out at the last minute, so that leaves 9R with a real struggle. 35% of their staff drives 30 miles or more to work. And it's probably the same with the police department. So that's a huge percentage of your staff that is not within what we would like to see as environmentally friendly driving distances, if nothing else, right? So she says, Karen, what's Karen's last name? Chesser, sorry, Karen Chesser, the new superintendent, says that this is contributing to absenteeism by staff and also attrition, which it gets old real fast, right? They have a lot of bond projects underway. The small ones are happening right now, which you don't really notice because they're small, but they'll soon be going out for Miller and Durango High School work. And they'll be doing green and sustainability in all projects. And there are Elections coming up for the 9R School Board. There are 3 seats up for election. There are 4 seats that are open. One of them is being filled by appointment because of timing of how that all worked given their bylaws. So there will be an election for 3 seats this year. Enrollment is declining in elementary grades, and that's also reinforcing our need for housing because we don't have families living here. Natural Lands Preservation Board meeting, there was a significant interest in creating a unified master plan for the Parks and Rec Board, the Natural Lands Board, and the Multimodal Board, given that they share in some way, shape, or form sales taxes, dedicated sales taxes. So I think you'll probably be hearing that conversation come up again about a unified master plan versus individual master plans. And then the Infrastructure Advisory Board meeting, which I attended because Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy was driving on her way back.
No, actually, I was on a river, I think.
No,
I was driving.
You were driving back.
Sorry, I was driving.
Yeah, you were driving back. So they talked about drought monitoring, and that obviously we're still in a drought. Talked about monthly water supply and demand info, and right now we're fine, but they're keeping a close eye on that. They discussed the 2020 Water Master Plan. So they went over the final draft report and questions and answers, and talked about, yep, so that's where they are with that. And I don't remember exactly what the next steps are on the Water Master Plan, but I'm sure that we'll be getting it reasonably soon. So, any other thoughts before we go? Thank you, everyone. Wonderful.
Before you hammer, I know that we have 2 staff still standing with us.
Actually, they're sitting down.
Sitting down, but I wanted to acknowledge the staff that stayed here to the bitter end. Not just you guys, but the others as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to, I know Mark and Dan were here as well.
We've got Victor and Tom and
Victor and Tom.
Else, yes.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to you guys. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Adjourned.